Good evening, everyone. There are some extra seats available here for any residents that want to have a seat. They say reserved, but I think everybody's got a seat. So any of you standing, please feel free to sit. Or not. Okay. Okay. Again, good evening, everyone. I would like to start the East Whiteland Township Planning Commission meeting, January 28th of 2026. Would you please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business tonight would be to approve the meeting minutes from December 16th, 2025. I think there was, what, 3 of us here at that time? Was there only 3 of us?
It was just 3 of you, yeah.
Yeah. So, does anyone have any comments, changes, or would one of the 2 of you like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 16, 2025 meeting of the planning.
All those in favor?
Second.
Second? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, being this is the first meeting of the year, we have to reorganize the board and elect officers. So if you could just be patient while we do that quickly, I would appreciate it.
I'd like to move that we...
The first position would be the election of chair. Go ahead, sorry.
That's okay, we just kind of...
Yeah.
I would like Deborah to serve as chair again, if she's willing.
Thank you.
So I move. Anybody second?
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Election of the vice chair. John Lohmer's been here, has done a good job. He's quiet, he's smart, he volunteers other places. I'd like to nominate John Lohmer as vice chair of the planning commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You've got somebody.
Oh,
Debbie, just so you know, you can't hear anything, it's not being picked up on the mics. It's gonna talk into it, it's gonna talk loud, okay? Sorry.
all right. Is that good?
Better.
Sorry,
better?
sorry about that. Would you like us to
We started over.
restart over?
Just reiterate.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance.
So, John,
I accept the vice chair position.
okay. Congratulations. Congratulations to John Lohmer. He's the new vice chair of the Planning Commission. Thank you all. Okay, the first development application is going to be for a solar field at 1145 West King Road. The Sisters Servants of Immaculata Heart of Mary. Waiver of land development application for a solar field and relocated grotto on the Immaculata University campus. The property is located in the institutional zoning district. Who's here for Immaculata? Hello.
Good evening, Rob Labor here.
Here we go.
Good evening, Rob Lambert here, Site Engineering Concepts on behalf of the applicant. Hopefully this is a pretty easy project for you this evening. The sisters are proposing to build a solar field on the Immaculata campus. So you can see on the screens the pink area in the center, that's where the proposed solar field is. It's to supply power or a portion of the power to Camilla Hall, which is right to the right of that. Camilla Hall is the convalescent home for the sisters. and it will provide over 50% of the power for that building. One of the interesting features is actually they're going to maintain the meadow underneath where the solar panels are. They're trying to bring in some sheep actually to trim the grass underneath the solar panels periodically for that. The second project is a relocation of their existing grotto. So on the right-hand side, you can see an existing grotto that is on the campus. It's right above where the solar field is, actually downhill of it, but it's very difficult to get to. It's a little bit inaccessible. There's grade changes in that area, and so they're proposing to build relocate it or build a replica of it in the pink area, so you can see that up to the left. Neither one of these locations are really seen from any of the public way. They're really internal to the campus.
I have one question. I know the project. Whatever you hire. Thank you. I love the project. I love sheep. It's a good combination. I've had an experience with solar panels on a building, I will just say, where in the morning hours in the summer, the angle is just right, even though it's coated anti-glare. You can't even bear to be in part of the kitchen. It feels like lasers from outer space are zooming in, so just double check your angles.
We will review those. But in the location, I don't see that being an issue.
That's good.
What will happen to the existing product?
Pardon?
What will happen to the existing product?
Thanks.
We're going to restore that area, whether the structure's moved or just left to remain there. It is still to be determined.
Is the purpose of the solar field to use it strictly for the power for Immaculata, or will it be resold back into the?
It's meant to offset their usage. It will be tied into the grid. I was just told this evening it was actually approved by PICO today. And so it will be tied into the grid, but the real purpose is to offset. It doesn't even offset the full building. The one building they're using, it'll only be a little bit over 50%.
Thank you. Any other board questions?
I'm ready to suggest that we make a motion to recommend.
Are there any questions from the audience regarding this project? Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Oh, do I have to come up? This was just totally, I didn't even know this was going to be here. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Do I have to give my name and all that good stuff? Megan Reese from Malvern. I was just wondering what size the system was going to be. You like the size, and then where you were going to put your, are you going to have batteries? You know, your backup batteries.
There won't be any batteries. It's going to be tied into the grid, right?
Okay.
But it'll be a 500 kilowatt system.
Okay. How big is that? How big is that?
1,120 panels.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Would somebody like to make a recommendation?
I would like to move that we recommend to the supervisors waiver of land development application for a solar field and the relocated grotto. It's in an institutional zoning district.
John, turn your mic on and talk.
I'll have to get used to this. I will work on it. Yeah, I'll do it quickly again. I recommend that we recommend to the supervisors that they approve the waiver of land development for the solar field and upgraded grotto, we'll say.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay, we have more seats available. The next application is for a data center, Sentinel Green Fig LLC. It's an amended land development application to construct 2 data center buildings, surface parking areas, landscaping, stormwater management facilities, and a connection to the Chester Valley Trail. The amended plan differs from the previously approved plan as follows. Total building square footage has increased from 1,026,800 square feet to 1,656,630 square feet, along with related increases in building coverage and impervious coverage. Cooling equipment has been redesigned and relocated from the ground immediately adjacent to the buildings, water-consuming cooling towers to the rooftop, waterless rooftop chillers, along with corresponding sound mitigation barriers. And emergency backup generators have been relocated from the basement of the buildings to the ground immediately adjacent to the buildings, along with corresponding sound mitigation barriers. The office uses and loading facilities have been relocated from the southern side of the building to the northern side of the buildings facing Sweetsford Road. Additional trees and landscaping have been proposed on the former sewer lagoons located between the development site and Sweetsford Road. Design and location of stormwater management facilities, parking lots, and internal circulation areas have been modified. Previously proposed microwave towers, antenna yards, and ground-mounted cooling towers. Wait a minute, previously proposed.
They're going away.
Okay. The microwave towers are going away.
Yeah.
The property located along the south side of Sweetsford Road near the township boundary with West Whiteland is within the INS institutional zoning district. Good evening. I think we have to turn ours off for yours to work.
Good evening. Lou Colagreco here representing the applicant this evening. Before you is an amended site plan for the data center project on Sweetsford Road. Deb, you accurately outlined the changes between the plan that was approved last year and the plan that is now before the board for review. The plan application was submitted, I guess, a couple of months ago for the plan that's now before the township. And we have since then received review letters, as is the par for the course, from your professional consultants. We're prepared to answer any questions. As far as we're concerned, the comments in those review letters are fairly insignificant and can be addressed, and we're not in disagreement with any of those comments in those review letters. But I thought what we would do, and I'm at your discretion, it's your meeting, you control how you want to proceed here, but I thought probably what the best way to do this would be to have the applicant introduce himself, Josh Rabina, who's the principal of Sentinel Green Fig Development. They came in, Josh and his group came into this project following the approval that we received last year. And when they looked at the plan, they suggested certain changes to address certain issues: water consumption, energy consumption, elimination of the 250-foot microwave towers, building relocation, building size adjustment, elimination of a basement. They just looked at it with a different set of eyes. And they said, the first plan works, this plan probably works better. It addresses certain concerns that we have heard about regarding data centers. And I'll let Josh get into that. So I thought what we would do is maybe have Josh introduce himself, identify with more particularity what I just said, some of those changes that they thought should be made to the plan, which we have incorporated into the plan. We've been consistent with the municipal ordinances. No one has cited to us any variation from municipal ordinances or any deviation from the ordinances. And then what I thought we would do is briefly have Jack Robinson, who's our civil engineer. He could detail the site plan changes, you know, how the building rotation has been adjusted. Frankly, based on the review comments we've received, the civil engineering doesn't seem to be the principal point of concern from what I understand regarding the application. It's not a complicated site to engineer from a civil perspective. So with that said, I know people really don't want to hear lawyers go on and on and on. I thought what I would do right now is just introduce Josh, have him talk a little bit about his company, have him talk a little bit about the changes that he suggested that we make to the plan, which you now have in front of you. Have Jack go through his thing on the civil engineering. And then I believe that the most effective way to address these applications is a Q&A. Planning Commission asks questions, residents ask questions, anybody who has questions asks questions, and we respond, other than us monopolizing a meeting agenda for an hour and a half, talking about things that people may or may not care about. So we can deviate anywhere along the way that you want, but I think that might be the most productive way to get this presentation underway, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Lou.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the format tonight will be, we are going to listen to the entire presentation, and then we are going to take all the questions and public comment that is out there. So I would appreciate everybody being respectful and not interrupting anyone when speaking, and that goes for the board as well. So we'll listen to everything and then take questions and have a full discussion.
Good. We'll try and keep our presentation to, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, because I think a lot more can be gained through question and answer than it can through just us talking. So Josh, why don't you introduce yourself and...
Just on process, a question?
I'm sorry.
Just on process.
Yes.
If we have a question or a comment, do we have to come up to the microphone and state our
Yes.
name and our address?
Yes, please. Thank you.
That's a good point. I noticed there is a court reporter here, so they usually ask that people do that, identify themselves. It prevents people talking over each other and all that. So there's a little bit of decorum here that I guess we're going to try and observe here tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all for the time, and just by way of quick introduction, so the partnership that's building this project is really three companies. We're Sentinel Data Centers. I'll give you 2 minutes on us, but Ed Russo's here from Russo Development, one of the principals. They've been in this business for a long time as well, almost over 60 years. Ed develops, based in New Jersey, has developed almost 1,000 residential units a year, but also some very important data centers in New Jersey. Ed built and still owns the data center that the New York Stock Exchange sits in, for example, and JP Morgan Chase, et cetera. Third partner is Charlie Ladane. His company's Green Fig. Charlie Ladane. I would try to spell it, but I mess it up every time. Yeah. Charlie originally purchased the site after it was cleaned up. The site, as you may know, is a Superfund site. Was cleaned up after a number of years prior to Charlie's ownership. Charlie, assembled the site and got it through initial approvals, and we were able to be lucky enough to partner with Charlie to progress the project here. Sentinel, just by way of 2-minute background, we were founded in 2002 in the wake of the .com crash. We originally started buying and fixing broken buildings after the tenancy went away when the world evaporated back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Really then started building over the course of the next almost 25 years data center campuses that have been of various types, but we've built over that time about 12 campuses, starting up in New England, down to New York, New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina. We are not a transient owner. We live with the assets we build. We take enormous amount of pride in what we build, and we try to obviously build buildings that look good and make ourselves part of the communities that we build in. This is an enormously important project for us. This will be what we spend the better part of our time as an organization on over the next couple of years. As Lou mentioned, we've made some modifications. The modifications are derived to some degree out of the current needs of the occupants of these things now, and obviously technology has evolved and continues to march on, and the building form factors and the way that we cool them and power them, et cetera, have also evolved. So the major changes, as Lou mentioned, the buildings got bigger. We don't need the basement, so previously the 1 million square feet didn't include another 500,000 square feet of basement. We got rid of the basement entirely. We are cooling these buildings in a very different manner than we used to back in the old days. The old days we used to use an open loop cooling tower evaporative system that would evaporate the equivalent on this site of millions of gallons of water. The prior approval used that type of a cooling system. We are now able to do this with a closed loop system, air-cooled chiller, so there's zero water used for cooling. The water that's used at the site now will be strictly what would have otherwise been used by an office building for restrooms and sinks and fire protection, obviously. We are enhancing in every way we can the look and feel of the building. We've moved what looks like the office part of the building to the northern half of the project facing Swedesford Road. We brought in Gensler, who's a very renowned architect, to design a building that we hope looks good. We've lived within kind of the neutral tones and everything that the zoning required, and we can show you some renderings of what that's going to look like. We've materially enhanced, I think, by 2 or 3x the landscaping that sits within the old sewage treatment areas that have been infilled with grass currently, but we'll be adding north of 680 trees and bushes of much higher maturity and caliper than what was previously required. That essentially is going to look and feel like a reforestation of that stretch along Swedesford Road and almost completely mask the project from the street, and we can show you a few different renderings of what that looks like. And then the last major change is that the prior use needed line of sight communication to some of the trading hubs in northern New Jersey, and as a result they needed 150-foot tall microwave towers, and that's not part of our use, so we're able to get rid of the towers. Happy to answer any questions. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah, we'll give it.
Consistent with what we said previously, we'll just go through the presentation because some of the questions may be answered by subsequent people that we have appear here this evening. The landscaping embellishment that was just talked about along the old sewage lagoon. By the way, this applicant over the last 2 or 3 years has cleaned up what used to be a sewage lagoon out there, has decommissioned the plant at its cost, and has spent the last 8 or 9 or 10 years cleaning up this Superfund site, actually to residential standards, but obviously this is not a residential development. And I say this by way of, I don't know what planning commission members remember the prior application, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself or that you already know this, but recall way back when the last plan was approved, the current plan I should say was approved, we submitted a landscaping plan that was compliant with the township ordinances, and it was approved. And I think what we're referring, well, I know what we're referring to now. At that time, there was also discussion that if we received some additional state funding or grant money, that we would embellish that landscaping regime almost threefold, with a plan that has been worked on by some students, I think at Temple University and others. They call it the Wave Forest Plan, and we can explain that in more detail if necessary. That is now part of this current application. We have found the funding internally to do that excess planning. So that's part of this application as well. So with that said, I think if we can punch up the site plan, Zach. Our next witness, Jack Robinson, our civil engineer who prepared the plan, can just briefly walk through it. There are not a lot of changes, layout-wise. I know the building size has increased, but the access remains the same off Sweetsford Road, the principal access. And as for the rest of it, that's about all I know, or that I can talk to with explicit knowledge. So I'll ask Jack to briefly run through any other site plan changes that might be more, you might be able to speak to better than I.
Yes, hello. Jack Robinson from JMR Engineering. And I can give you a brief overview. This project, let me just give you let me go over the site as a whole, and I'll touch on what's common to the prior plan first. The site's laid out with two buildings that really run north-south. So south is to the south of the plan, north is to the north is up. The West Whiteland, East Whiteland Township line is to the left. This is good, yeah, Zach here, he's right on it. The hatch pattern right there to the left that you see, that's the stormwater, a lot of the stormwater system, and that's in West Whiteland. There's a perimeter drive around the whole site as well as an interior drive. So each building had its own loop road. And as Lou mentioned, we take access through Sweetsford Road, which has been since the retirement community 20-some years ago. And there's also another alternate access through South Backton Hill Road as well, off to the east. And those are effectively the similarities. The plan, really, if you stand back at 10,000 feet, it almost looks exactly the same. The buildings have grown. The buildings were 257,000 square foot in their footprint and are now 410,000 and 417,000 in the footprint. Instead of chillers that were on the sides of the building, there's generators on the side of the building. Parking has been adjusted. We used to have parking right along the length of the building. Now we have more focused parking lots to the east and to the west. And also the office has moved to the north. So there's little, bump outs, I'll call them, in the front, in the front of the buildings in the north. Those are the office areas and loading dock areas. And what that does is we like that area, the user, our client wanted to see that in the front, and it also helped push the buildings further away from the residential areas. So it just gave us that much more distance that we had before, and it worked out, I think, for the best for the layout. So that was one change that we had made.
Hold on a minute, Jack.
Yes.
Is it possible to use the pointer to follow along what Jack is speaking about so the audience can follow? Thank you.
You mean it was Zach or not me?
Zach.
Okay. Yeah, that's the office areas, the little bump outs right there. And there were, so we're at least to the east, or where that focused parking lot is to the east, we used to have what we called antenna yards that were there before. There's no more antenna yards. And we also had, and they were located remotely to the southeast and the southwest, kind of it's almost kind of no man's land where PICO kind of controls the land where all those easements are. We had two 150-foot tall microwave towers, which are also removed from the plan. So the plan is a little more simple now. We just have two dedicated data center buildings. There's no more, I'll call it, accessory uses that we had before on the site. And I think that summarizes really the site layout changes.
What we can speak to now, I know that with these data center uses, there's always questions about sound, the generation. We submitted a sound study to the township, which has been reviewed by a sound consultant for the township, and we can answer questions to that as needed. Suffice it to say, I think it's a fair summarization of the sound study that the uses as proposed do comply with the sound decibel level requirements in the township zoning ordinance, which frankly, I think, were updated at the time with the last data center project. I'm not quite sure on the timing, but something tells me that this issue was explored and an ordinance was enacted back with the first data center application. The moving of this machinery around the building has managed to keep us compliant with those sound level requirements in the zoning ordinance. We can get into as much specificity as you want on that. I'm sure the township's traffic sound consultant, Carr Everback, can speak to that as well. But I just wanted to let you know that. What I was going to do at this stage of the game is we did receive a number, as we typically do with any land development filing. The township sends it off to its professional staff as consultants for review. We received probably 4 or 5 review letters. I don't intend to go through each and every one of the comments in those review letters. There aren't many. Suffice it to say, if there were some that we thought were problematic, I would bring them to your attention. We didn't see any. If there are any comments that you or township staff or anybody has regarding those reviews, that's why we're here tonight. That's why it's a public meeting. We can address them. And if we can't address them, we would let you know that. But we went through these letters. We received them, I guess, a week or so ago, whenever it was. And we're confident that we can meet any of those comments that are in these review letters. So, again, I didn't want to monopolize this with the presentation. What I would like to do before we're done describing this is if we have, I think we have the renderings of what the buildings would look like. That might be interesting to at least show. And then, Deb, the meeting's up to you. I mean, direct comments however you would like, but. I think it's at the end of this slide shows that. Okay, well, let's back up. Let's back up. If there's somebody on our team who's more educated.
Just very briefly, there's I think 2 or 3 slides that just show the new landscaping along Swedesford and you know, emulate a drive down the road. You know, really just showing that you can't see much of the buildings, and then we've artificially removed the trees on the subsequent 2 slides, and just so you can see that front elevation. So this is, that's again, right, you can see on the upper right the little key plan. Sorry. On the upper right of the plan, you can see a key plan with a red arrow that's showing where the actual vantage point is looking. So this is driving from the west to the east along Swedesford Road. This is similar, but looking down at the main entryway across from the Malvern Hunt development. So, you know, similar vantage point here. This is the northern elevation, again, artificially removing all the trees in terms of where the camera angle is from, but the northern elevation of the building. So as we referenced before, this is, you know, the office section, which will look and feel like, you know, like an elevated technology park type storefront, you know, with the bulk of the building sitting to the south of this behind it. It's just a slightly closer look at the front elevation. This just shows how the 2 buildings pair together and, you know, sort of, you know, speak to each other, if you will. The building to the right of the page will be built first. That's phase 1, would be the westernmost building, and then we'd add the second building in the future. Just another vantage point. Yeah, that's the screening you see there is the equipment yard. So, you know, behind that is, you know, that provides both visual and to some degree, you know, acoustical screening of the generators. The generators sit in their own acoustical enclosure, acoustically attenuated enclosures within that yard. Just another view of both buildings. And I think
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. I think we're going to take questions from the Planning Commission first and have the discussion, and then we're going to move to public comment. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, Bob?
Here we go. I'm Bob Logan. No particular order, and I don't know who should answer these best. It seems some of these changes are less people-friendly, less Malvern Hunt friendly. The loading dock being pushed to the front, I mean, behind your two buildings, there's nothing but empty land till you get back to Route 30. So I'm kind of wondering why that's in the front. I read the study, the finance study that showed all the taxes and things like that. And you had 30 employees, and it looks like that's parking for a lot more than 30 people, is my second issue. And the attorney said, well, yeah, we had review letters, there's only a few comments, but we're not going to talk about them. I think if you reviewed the review letters and your responses, that might head off a lot of the questions from the residents in the audience. That's it.
Okay, we can do that. I mean, I won't speak to the design layout. I'll let somebody else to speak to that question. But we can start with, I don't know, start with whatever review letter you want to start with. I mean, is anybody concerned about the traffic review letter? Most of the traffic comments pertain to internal circulation and putting stop signs at various locations internal to the site. One of the benefits of a use like this is obviously the diminution in traffic generation over the history of this site. It goes, back 20 years from the continuing care retirement community, which proposed and had approved over 700 units. The traffic diminution is considerable with a data center. I would tend to agree with you on the parking. It's probably overparked, but that's the ratio of parking that the zoning board established that we should go forward with. If somewhere along the line somebody says put in less parking, I don't think that's going to be a problem for us. But I think that, again, we're going by the rules that were established along the way. So if the township, and that's sort of an issue where the township might decide to put some of the parking in reserve. Don't build it up front. If you need it, build it later. We can have that dialogue with the supervisors. That's not an issue for us. On the civil engineering letter, when I say civil engineering letter, I mean the Arrow review of 11326. Jack, you can briefly go through those comments if you'd like. I don't need to walk through them, but why don't we use the Arrow review letter?
Sure.
And then we can go through the other review letters after that.
Yeah, I mean, as Lou said, the parking is there is some additional over what the zoning was required, and that was just a request by our client, just because there will be a rare event when they have an upgrade that they may need some extra parking, and that means like once a year or something like that. They want to make sure they have it. So there's not that many more than are required by ordinance. The ordinance is 1 for every 10,000 square feet. So that's the requirement, and we don't have a large amount over what that is required, but it's I can do that. I can speak way up if you like. So I mean, parking is really not a major major part of this plan. It's one thing that data centers do have is very little parking. If we want to look through Arrow's letter, it's...
There's not a lot of items to go through. Why don't you just go through them one by one? And
Yeah. Trying to find the letter, though. There's, is that one? Okay. I already have responses to the letters as well. I mean, the first comment was just about Aqua's will serve letter, which we've provided. Second, these are all standard, I don't want to say boilerplate, these are standard land development comments. One is about the proof of service for sewer, which we have already from the prior plan, but we're getting it, I'll say re-upped for this, and we're in that process now. Design plans for the existing, the approval letters for the pipeline. We have a pipeline crossing it when we cross the township property. We've always had that. We actually have all of those standard, what they call low nose letter of no objection letters from Williams, Sunoco, and Buckeye, yeah. Forgetting Buckeye, and which we just received today, actually. Comment about labels on the curb, some curb radii we added to the plan. It's a very simple comment. And the next few are just about how we need an NPDS comment effectively, which we've already submitted and are we're in the amended NPDS permit process right now. Others are also boilerplate, developer guarantees for landscaping. And these are more comments where we respond by saying acknowledged, acknowledged, acknowledged. There's no actual plan work to be done. Financial security, number 10, these are all things that, are going to be on every letter that has to be posted. Number 11 is, again, the NPDS comment, which has been filed already. There was a comment about needing an easement for the West Whiteland Basin, which actually is not necessary now because we are combining. There's only one lot now in East Whiteland for these data centers, and the owner that owns West Whiteland also owns this property, so no easement is actually even required now because of that common ownership. And the other, there's a few comments about stormwater, these are very minor, just showing the land cover on a plan, which we think we did. The time and concentration, this was more like a couple items for plain content on our stormwater. There was no actual stormwater comments, I would say, as far as that would change anything. Number 16 is an O&M. When we say acknowledge, we always will have to provide an O&M, operations and maintenance for the stormwater. That's standard. That's number 17 as well, O&M. There was a typo in the zoning, that's the comment number 18. Handled that comment. So I think there was a discrepancy on the plan numbering in the legend for number 19. That was minor, so we did that. I think it was labels for silt socks, number 20. 21 is regarding the MRCs, and my engineer has a long response for this so that I'm not going to, I don't want to get into reading, but this was not a major comment. It was about looking at our HydroCAD model and making sure that our MRCs had a setting made for the flow. But this site, stormwater-wise, is well over-designed. We have more capacity than we actually are required and always have on this site. Waivers, I don't know if I need to go through all those, but they're all the same waivers we had in the prior plans, and Arrow reconfirmed all of them. We did add one waiver to allow the amended land development plan to be as a preliminary/final plan, because, and I think a lot of it is these letters, as you can see, there's not. I think for a plan of this size, you say, oh, this should be long letters, but we've already been through this process, and that's why these letters aren't so long.
Right.
And so, we decided that a preliminary/final request was appropriate. So the next letter.
I realize we've been through this already, but we have residents here tonight who have
sure.
not been through it, so that's why I thought we should read the
Yes.
letters.
As helpful as us asking questions. The
Well, you-
This doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah, this is chop, chop, let's go.
It doesn't, the initials you're saying,
so you don't want to hear the review letters?
not necessarily. Well, we want them online so we can read them. That would be great, yes.
They are online, aren't they, Zach? No?
Not as of
No? Oh, okay. Sure, go ahead, Mike.
So, Lou, maybe you can answer this question. Has the waiver for preliminary final, thanks, has the waiver for preliminary final treatment already been submitted, or is that forthcoming?
It's forthcoming.
Okay,
We're
all right.
presenting it tonight to the Planning Commission. We're going to ask for it, just like we did with the prior application, but, you know, well, I was going to use that as part of my summation here, but
All
now
right,
that we're
that's
talking-
fine. I just wanted,
That's no
he
problem.
mentioned it, and I didn't see it in the materials. I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Logan, are you okay with that? I mean, I think the residents want to ask questions rather than to go through each.
Yeah, they didn't want to hear.
I think we'll get to most of the questions, but.
My
most of
concern
the
was,
issues.
I didn't want all the residents to start firing questions.
No, I hear you. I
And
hear
your
you.
answer is going to be, oh, it's in the review letter.
No, I hear you. We'll answer every question that we can possibly answer. I think that's a more productive use of time. So, Deb, I don't, do you want to have the commission finish their
Well,
questions first?
I think we need to finish our questions if
Yeah.
there are any. Okay, so rather than read the review letters to the public, let's just ask our questions. And I know, John, how about you start?
I have a long list, and I'm going to make this very brief. If we don't have an immediate answer, let's just go to the next question, please.
All right.
All right. John Laumer here, Laumer. First one is, how many diesel generators will there be? And what are your operating permit limits? Thank you. What are the operating permit limits on your diesel generators, and how many will there be?
All right. Can you hear this now? All right, we will speak louder. We will speak louder. Speak loudly.
Hey everyone, Nick Marzorati, Sentinel Data Centers.
Slow down and speak loud.
Sure, Nick Marzorati, Sentinel Data Centers. Nice to meet you, John. The intent is for 36 per building, and so I think 72 total diesel engines for the campus. We still have to file for a formal DEP emissions permit. The intent is, though, and this might answer a subsequent question that you might have with regards to emissions control, and so all the diesel engines that we plan to procure will be Tier 2 certified with Tier 4 after treatment. So they'll all have what are known as fancy catalytic converters that are on your car, but for much larger engines. So they'll have selective catalytic reducers to be within operating limits that are set by the DEP. As it stands now, it looks like, based on our emission consultants' calculations, will be permitted approximately 40 to 45 hours per year per engine.
45.
But our intent is to operate much reduced quantities, likely in closer to the 16 to 18 hours per year per engine, which would likely be about an hour to an hour and a half per month.
So would this be for maintenance purposes?
That's right.
In an emergency condition, can you comment about that? If there's a power shortage, lines down, what have you, what would be the likely scenario?
Yeah, so, and not to get into too much of the weeds, but this facility is fed by two highly redundant 230 kV high voltage transmission lines fed by the adjacent Pico Plainbrook substation. Both those lines are redundant to each other, meaning that if any one of those lines goes down, the other line can support the utility capacity for the building. And so the likelihood of both of those lines being down at any one time and all of those engines to be operating simultaneously is very, very low. The Pico Plainbrook substation that provides power to this facility, that substation itself, which is utility owned by Pico, is fed by redundant 230 kV circuits from the Tredyffin and I think the Bradford substation. So there are two high voltage transmission circuits from each of those substations that feed this Pico Plainbrook. And for our facility to see an outage that would require all gens to run, it would mean that there would likely be wide-scale grid outages because that would mean 230 kV Plainbrook substation would be down as well.
And final question on generators, how much fuel will be in storage?
Yeah, typically we would put a what's known as a belly tank below each of these generators, and the most we store on site per generator is about 24 hours of use. So roughly, I think it's in the 5,000 gallon range per belly tank per generator.
Okay, that's good for generators then, thanks. Should I keep going? I want to keep the easy ones first here. Would your secondary or your internal cooling loop, the primary one usually called, does that have biocides or glycols in it? And what are the maintenance procedures?
I think you're referring to the primary cooling loop within the building. The primary cooling loop, there won't be glycol used. So normally in colder environments, you would put a mixture of water and propylene glycol to eliminate the need, the opportunity for freezing. This facility will use a variety of other freeze protection methods, like heat tracing our piping, which is basically running a hot wire around the pipe, insulating the piping, as well as other strategies like freeze protection pumps, which keep fluids circulating to prevent them from freezing. In this instance, we don't anticipate any biocides, so call it the chemical treatment that happens within our processed water are really, kind of corrosion inhibitors, which are, fairly common in water systems.
Thank you, that's an important answer. All right, I'll keep going. And is that, by the way, your NPDES permit touch that? The loop discharges?
I don't think that's within the purview of that.
No, it's not?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, also good. Thank you. The Chester County Trail, could we see proximity and get a distance estimate of nearest point? Zach?
Could you repeat the question, actually?
Yes, the question is how far is the trail, Chester County Trail, at the nearest point to the proposed facility?
So I'll take that one just because I'm pointing at it.
Yeah,
This is the trail through here. This is a trail connection they're proposing along their access drive to provide, people from the surrounding communities to connect into it. So the trail essentially runs through here. I'll let somebody else estimate, maybe based off this dimension line.
It's 130. It's about 130 feet to the nearest corner of the building. That's the nearest corner.
Set down considerably.
Yeah, the elevate. I mean, if you're down, well, you'll see. We didn't have photos, but if you're down on the trail, and and with all the landscaping, you can't see up at the site.
Yeah,
very well.
That's a segue to the follow-on question I have, of course, which is, how is the view shed, if you can pardon that term, view shed, impacted? Like, can people see the facility as they approach it from the west, as they approach it from the east, and when does that begin to happen?
When does it begin? When you begin to actually be able to see it?
If you're coming along the trail.
I ride that trail. I'm Charles Ledane, and I'm from Green Fig. And I ride this trail fairly frequently.
Charlie, could you come back and speak into the microphone, please? It's just hard to capture the sound on the live stream.
On the east end, you come out from the tunnel under Sweetsford Road, and you come out there, and you're well below grade, and the land on the cap site, which is on the right end there, is considerably higher. It starts to taper off when you get down past almost to the portion at the line between the two townships, and it becomes a little more visible there. But all of that area along there on our side is fairly. We went through this before at the last batch of hearings. There's a lot of brush along there, and we're going to take care of the view from Sweetsford Road mostly by reforesting the area of the lagoons with the wave forest.
You've answered my question. Thank you. It's great. What about the sound impacts on the trail? Has that been modeled?
Yeah, we performed extensive sound modeling for the reconfiguration of our cooling system being on the roof and generators outside. And so we did these studies actually with relative comparison to the previous sound studies that were performed. And we had sound receptors measuring at our property line, which I believe would be on the south, basically on the south side of where that trail is. And I believe Carr Everbach, the Township's acoustician, issued a review letter citing kind of favorable results for our sound study with a couple follow-ups to that report, indicating some means of active monitoring of our sound levels at the property line, which we're considering because we think it's a great idea, and additional follow-up on some of the characteristics for the sounds that's being propagated. But as it stands now, the reports that we've put together and the sound study we've done show no ordinance violations currently with the proposed equipment.
Well, I just wanted to amend to your statement that Chester County Trail is really important for East Whiteland, for all the townships hereabout, and we wouldn't want to see it become an unpleasant place to walk. And if you want an example of that, just go south down past, where the Wegmans is, and at about a quarter mile, you'll want to turn around and go home. It's that loud.
I think one thing that from my perspective, an engineer's perspective on this, that I think is worth noting to...
Jack, speak into the microphone a little closer.
I'm going to swallow this thing here.
Sorry.
I think it's worth noting that our sound studies go to the property line. So the property line, like you said, that's actually, between us and the trail.
Right.
So the concern is mostly the residents who's around here, but thankfully we're buffered by another property, and so the sound is even more deadened.
Right.
But the code has to be met before the trail.
Thank you, Jack. I think that's important information too.
One thing also to note is that I've been on this site for 25 years, so I probably know more than anybody still alive actually right now. And this site is what created this trail that's there now. This trail and the sewer wouldn't be there without this site. The owners of this site 20 years ago built all that, and I designed it. And so it kind of, goes with this site. So that's even as part of this site, I would say.
I'm getting through this now, and it'll be somebody else's turn to handle one of the topics, which will be cost. But I won't touch that. I want to talk about the hourly heat flux from the data center. And I want to amend that with the thought, we've all seen industrial chimneys that are 40, 60, 80, even 200 feet high, because even if it's dry, heat doesn't always disperse upward. We know that. You smell fire when a building's on fire. So I would like to know more about the heat flux that might encompass, or might not, the trail and properties north. Has that been modeled? Has it been studied? Comments tonight? If not, maybe answers another time.
Yeah, the quick answer is we do model, they're called exterior computational fluid dynamic studies, and they model how the air streams emanate off of heat rejecting equipment. They're mostly modeled with respect to their impact to themselves. We have not, but we can and we will model with respect to the impact to the adjacent kind of things off of the property line, if you will, which we can follow up with.
Yeah, it would be good to have a plume footprint,
Sure.
X and Y and Z.
Sure.
Because one concern a logical person will come up with is, are my air conditioners going to be working harder because I'm getting more hot air blown in my house direction? And by the way, I looked at the windroses for Reading and Philly and Westchester, and between 20 and 30% of the time in summer, wind is southerly component.
Sure, yeah, we can definitely model that.
That would be very interesting to all of us, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And that's me. I'm done.
Thanks, John. Jamie, any questions?
I know from a cybersecurity perspective, obviously, probably targets we know, at least from a cybersecurity perspective, through, I guess, the physical security at the site, what is planned
And then, this give or take evolves a little bit, but typically it's a perimeter fencing around the site. So in the renderings we showed there's a Ameristar 8-foot fence, typical that you'd see in an office complex. Sometimes it's reinforced a little bit more than it would be in a typical industrial environment. There's enormous amounts of security inside the building, so facial recognition so that the interior folks can make sure that nothing's coming or going that shouldn't be within the building from an IT perspective, which is less our scope and more of our own customers' scope. So from the outside, you would really just see a fence and a bunch of cameras like you would a normal looking building, maybe a few more cameras in terms of density, but it wouldn't look too different from the inside. Obviously, lots of bells and whistles.
But fully fenced,
the perimeter of each ring road, not the entire site, but each building has it, as Jack mentioned, has its own perimeter ring road. So that perimeter ring road for each building would have a fence around it. You can see, if you go to the renderings, you can kind of, I think, kind of catch a glimpse. Yeah, you can see that black, yeah, see that?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I couldn't see that earlier before it was zoomed in, thank you. Next question would be around energy consumption and any expected impact to local energy costs driven by the building of this site. If there are comparable sites in our area, I'd be looking definitely more for something in the Northeast versus something, maybe in the South, that where energy cost is similar to what we pay here.
Yeah, so first I'll caveat by saying, we are not experts on energy cost. PECO, who's the local utility that everyone knows, owns the transmission and distribution infrastructure in the region. Sorry. So PECO is the utility. They are a regulated utility. They set costs. It's a complicated issue. It's an issue that doesn't necessarily lend itself to sound bites. What I will say is when we cite these utilities, or when we cite these facilities, our first call is to the utility because we want to go to places where they can accommodate us. And in this case, and often that tends to be places where there used to be a lot of industrial load that has left the system. So, this building used to be, there used to be a steel plant, a steel rolling mill around the corner. Charlie knows better than I do, but what used to be here? Yeah.
There's the site here, there's a railroad line that goes up through there, and it came from the Worthington rolling mill, and you could just go all the way down there, and you come down to our place, which was a lithium processing plant. There was a lot of power draw in there, and all of those businesses closed up and left the infrastructure that was there.
Yeah.
And what we did,
and I think
Sorry,
just
sorry,
to
just
answer
to-
your question,
I was
more
gonna say,
directly,
that's not really
the
answering.
only point I'm making is the upgrades that are necessary in this specific location are very minimal. We're connecting to the Plainbrook substation, which is directly adjacent to us. We are paying for all the upgrades. So we posted a $30 million letter of credit with PECO. They are drawing down to pay for their improvements. The other piece of this is PECO, these utilities are built with enormous amounts of fixed costs. So they have their office, their CEO, their trucks, their maintenance fleet, their lines, et cetera. There are elements within the system that cause power rates to go up and down, but one element that affects the local territory is that the more kilowatt hours you have to spread your fixed costs over, just like when a lot of load leaves the system, utilities have to increase rates because they don't have in North Carolina the textile industry anymore, and they have to amortize their costs over a much smaller base. When you add load, there are elements, again, the narrative is complicated and we are not experts, but there are elements that cause rates to go down, and there are elements that cause rates to go up.
I
And
I
that's
would
it.
be interested in hearing about impact studies in other communities.
Yeah. I mean, we anecdotally have been doing this for 25 years and have
I'm
not-
sure there's
not-
data out there.
Yeah, I mean, again, yeah.
So we don't know the data centers that have been built. There's no answer to your question. Is that right?
The number of data
Is
centers
there
That-
a road from
not
Mount
been
Disney
built
and
in
out?
New Jersey and their rates are going up.
Yeah, I mean,
They don't know. They don't know.
we can't.
You're un-
correct.
it's-
We
it sounds
can't
like
say
you're
we
unable to
definitively
answer.
know.
How is this approved if you don't know how much?
Sir, we're going to take public comment shortly here. Let us just get through the rest of our questions, and I promise you'll have all the time. Well, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Kind of related to that too is the difference in expected energy consumption for the original plan versus the expanded square footage.
There should be no difference. The power request to PICO is the same in both cases.
So you're expecting the site consumption to be the same
I mean,
regardless of the square footage?
The prior buildings were capable of absorbing the same number of kilowatts as these buildings are. They used 3 stories with a basement instead of 2 stories that are slightly bigger, but there's no relevant difference in power consumption.
Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding that, the basement before had generators in it. It didn't have your computers that are pulling a lot of power.
Sure.
Or your chillers.
Yeah.
And so you do have more square footage, I get it. What's the comparison of the computer square footage compared to the old plan? And if it's 20% more, would you not expect to use 20% more electric?
Yeah.
I mean,
Thanks,
just
Jeff.
a logical
Yes.
sequence.
I wish I had a good answer. The prior plan was just a box. We never saw an interior plan. And also, technology has changed dramatically. So the average cabinet now, the average server cabinet can hold a lot more power, but it also, 50% of even the interior of this building, or even more, is that actually not servers. It's switchgear, it's pumps, it's piping, it's all of the mechanical and electrical systems that serve it. So less than, Nick can opine, but I think it's probably less than half of this building is actually servers. The older generation stuff, that ratio is different, so it's an impossible question to answer is the short
Okay, so
answer.
when you had this agreement with PICO, you had to have some idea. You weren't running one light bulb, you were running
what we do
a
know
lot
is
of them.
PICO has a cap, so we've
Yeah.
entered into a special agreement
Okay.
with PICO where they have a certain amount of power they can provide. Both plans were using
So that
all
means
of it.
that plant still, that substation still has the capacity to grow.
Correct, and
Okay.
PICO's heavily
So
regulated and
it's all tying together. So
Yeah.
do you want to continue?
You can, yeah, I think we can move on. I might have add-on questions.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, then it's my turn.
No, it's my turn.
Oh, well, you usually bypass.
Well, so to continue the discussion on power, I know that our township officials have had many discussions with, I guess, officials in Virginia where there's an excessive amount of data centers. And I know power was one of the topics. My question is, what kind of feedback, I don't mean to put you on the spot or whoever has this information, was there any feedback on the cost of power and how it affected the residents around what they call AI Alley or Data Center Alley? What?
3 at a time, just kind of take our turns. So we did have a virtual meeting with Mike Turner from Loudoun County. He's a supervisor. He's well-known in the industry. We did have a number of questions for him. We described to him this plan and some of the past surrounding it. We didn't speak specifically about consumer electric prices. We spoke a little bit about the adjacency of the Plainbrook substation, the upgrades, and the fact that the applicant was, bearing the cost of those. He didn't have specific numbers about resident cost increases. My limited understanding, albeit, is that, they're going to kind of operate on a separate supply, in the sense that their residential rates are not driven directly by commercial rates. They're supplied at different, energy levels and things like that. So not to diminish the issue, but we did not speak to Loudoun County about that specifically. What I would say, and I know there's plenty of questions about power consumption. Say from the township's perspective, our understanding has always been that there's supply within the Plainbrook Road substation. The applicant would be bearing the cost of the system upgrades to support their project. Beyond that, we've not seen any sort of detailed analysis of consumer prices or anything like that. So before it's asked any more directly, that's generally our understanding of the power supply aspect.
Thank you, Zach. Is there any other, regarding power? Because if not, I have another question about water.
Go ahead.
Okay. Could the engineer or somebody explain the water consumption issue? We hear a lot about the excessive amount of water that a data center requires, and I'd like to have somebody speak to that, what the old plan was, and what's the difference and the change with the new plan.
Yeah, Chris, right. Josh kind of touched on this in his opening statement. So the original plan utilized what's known as cooling towers, basically an open loop evaporative cooling tower. And so the primary method for rejecting heat from the building is through the use of evaporating water. And so what you end up seeing is roughly like 10 gallons a minute of evaporation for every megawatt that you use. And so that's a high, it's a fairly, a very water consuming product. Newer technology, cooling equipment, are air-cooled chillers. And so air-cooled chillers aren't new by themselves, but the technology that goes in them nowadays is much more efficient than it was 10 years ago. And not to bore everybody with the details, but there's basically a magnetically levitated compressor now. And the old chillers, there was bearings that were loud and noisy and very inefficient. Now the stators within compressors are magnetically levitated, and there's nothing touching them, so there's no friction. So air-cooled chiller technology has gotten way better over the last 5 to 10 years, and that's the technology we plan to deploy. And so that's why you might now be seeing a lot more air-cooled chillers because of the concerns with water consumption. The other thing that we like to avoid as data center developers is reduced critical utility systems. And so when you have a building that is highly dependent on evaporative water, very high water, that system becomes a very critical system. So a lot of redundancy gets built in. So you need a lot of storage to back up utility outages. So there's a lot of benefits to moving to air-cooled chillers now that they are as efficient as the older kind of water-cooled chiller technology. Hopefully that helps.
To put numbers on it, we did the math when we were analyzing this to make this decision. The equivalent prior building with the old technology, each building would have used about 3 million gallons per day of water for evaporation for the cooling system. For the cooling system in this building, we'll use 0. So it gets filled once at the beginning. It's a closed loop, and then it just uses air to cool it.
That's what I was looking for, the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It will use a normal amount, again, for bathrooms and sinks and fire protection, but nothing for anything.
Sure.
Does that change power usage?
It's roughly the same. That on an average basis, these chillers consume, the water-cooled chillers may be slightly on peak, very, very hot days, use less evaporative systems use less power, but blended over the year, it's minutia in terms of the differences, between the two systems.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
My answers or questions were answered just by that last question. With the consumptive use of water before and after the changes. I mean, I don't believe in zero, but I get what you're saying. It's considerably lower. And I guess I'll trust you, but I still find it hard to believe you're not consuming more electricity because you're replacing what water does, right? Which is a lot cheaper, let's say. It's a different form of pavement. You're buying water. And you're generally probably getting it 55 degrees, so it has a cooling power, but you're chilling now the water. So you're getting it back to 55 degrees. So you got to be using more electricity, but because of the efficiencies through the last couple of years of the planning, you might have gained it back again. So I can believe that part I can believe.
Yeah, the air-cooled chillers back in the day, they were very inefficient at what's called part load conditions. Now, what they call turn down, like in the hottest point of the day, there'll be a peak higher power consumption, but as the temperature comes down, they're partly loaded and therefore more efficient. Also, remember, when there is a separate water distribution system within the building that distributes the cooling water to these towers, that's additional pumps. And usually the flow for that pumping system is 2 or 3 times the flow that you might see within the building. And as you know, more flow means more pumping power, means horsepower, means more power. So on average, I would say an air-cooled chiller is roughly, in a climate like this, which is moderately cool, right? They're much worse in southern or hot, humid environments. Up here, there's maybe 5% overall on an annualized basis, less efficient with this technology. But again, that all kind of falls within the overall power that we'd be drawing from the grid that we have come in from PECO for.
May I ask a follow-on question of you, please? I think everybody understands that clouds are formed when humid air rises and gets up in the cold atmosphere. And actually, it's counterintuitive, but humid air is less dense than regular dry air. And so my question to you then is the relative humidity changed significantly by these air heat exchangers? And if so, do they become more or less dense? That's a complex question because of adiabatic heating and enthalpy, which we don't need to go into, but do you have a straight up answer?
No, it's hard to evaluate. I think it can be part of the plume study that we do as far as the heat gain on surrounding areas, which we can kind of support and give you a more concrete answer on that.
I think that's a really important issue, and look forward to seeing the plume modeling.
All right, just a follow-up to what we were talking about. You have 72 generators now. How many generators did you have before that were in the basement that are moved out now?
Again, I don't think it was ever specified. This is about a third. We think, we are not supporting all of the load in this case with generators. We're supporting less than a third. The prior building, I think, was sized to be able to support all the load, but we don't know.
Okay. I was just looking for. I didn't hear.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, could you speak to my understanding from the sound modeling?
Yeah,
everything's based essentially, I'll call it a worst case scenario,
yes,
catastrophic failure with the generator.
Both with, we are only.
Stop. Sorry. Court reporter can only take one case at a time.
Sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Can I just ask one? It might be easier to just respond to a question.
Yeah.
So the sound study, the way it was modeled, is based on a certain number of generators and a certain number of chillers. The sound study, as I understand it, was based on, I'll use the quote, worst case scenario, a larger number of generators than you're actually proposing. Is that correct?
Correct. We are, as Nick said, building 36 generators per building. we all, the sound study is conservative in two respects. One, where it assumes everything is running at 100%, which these users are very conservative and they don't come close to 100%. They have safety buffers typically around 70%. The generators, the ordinance, and I think the way this was run, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl can correct me, that the normal maintenance of these generators is only done 1 or 2 at a time, and that's what you apply in the sound study. So just to be fully candid, there's no scenario, again, the only time we would ever be running all the generators is if all of PECO's regional grid was out, which hasn't happened since the regional blackout in 2003, and when it did, it happened for 7 minutes and 7 hours. 7 hours, and frankly, when that happens, you want these buildings running. They keep the cell phones up and the computer internet working and everything else. But so the sound study applies a testing scenario, which is what would typically be happening on a monthly basis.
Sure. Yeah. Appreciate the clarification. I just wanted to, because I know that obviously, and I know there was a comment made about the review letters. We will post those online to help kind of put some context behind some of the other supporting documents that were submitted and reviewed. I just wanted to clarify that because the sound study does provide one number. What we've understood from subsequent conversations and what you've said here tonight is that that number of generators will be, about a third of what's modeled in the sound study.
Just a quick follow-on question, as long as we're on the subject of the number of generators. Nick, you said earlier that the intent was to have 36 generators per building for a total of 72. Can you clarify what you mean by intent? Will there be 36? Is there a possibility that there will be more than 36 per building?
We're willing to commit to 36 per building.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is to emphasize this downtime in the grid happened once in the last 23 years for 7 hours. If that grid goes down and we lose power in the area, we will provide people a way to take care of their cell phones, to charge their cars and charge their cell phones, and we will work with the township to power emergency equipment.
Jeff, were you done with your questions? Yeah. Okay. Tim?
Yeah, thanks everybody for the previous questions. I thought they were really good. I'm glad to see that the towers are being removed from the south and east of the property. Does the current design still, I think last time we talked about a sound wall. Is that wall still going to be here? Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, no, we
can. All right.
So because so we've gone through extensive modeling, I guess I mentioned this earlier with CAR. I don't know which sound wall you're referring to. I guess the latest design includes basically an acoustic screen wall on the roof to block the chiller noise. And we also are employing, you can kind of see it in the rendering, but coming down the side behind a portion of the generators in the front, that screening that's blocking the generators also has acoustic properties. Without these, call it sound mitigation measures, we wouldn't be able to provide ordinance compliance, and so we needed them based on the sound modeling that we performed.
All right.
We still Nick was not around with the original first design, but it's just, I'll call it, this is also a more real version because there's an actual builder here who knows how these work, and they've actually implemented and drawn it, and it's in essentially the same location with the same function. So we have a real design for that wall that we always showed in the old plan.
Okay.
So,
thanks. And I guess, is there a comparison of the reduced noise from the going from the water-cooled chillers to the air-cooled chillers?
Yeah, we can provide a comparison from the original sound study, if that helps with matching receptor locations. Yeah. They're in the same ballpark, within 1 or 2 dB. Yep.
Okay. Thanks. I'm done.
Sorry, just a follow-up question on the sound study. I remember the original study was, I guess, reviewed by Dr. Everbach? Where is he? Okay, there he is. And I'm assuming that you reviewed the new sound study as well. Can, if you,
Hello?
just give us a couple details
I'll give
and
you a couple of
on the
words.
changes.
My name has come up a lot already, so, and the public, I'm sure, is interested in this. So I'm a professor of engineering at Swarthmore College. I'm an acoustical consultant, and I was hired by East Whiteland Township to be the advocate for residents of East Whiteland as regards noise, sound from this facility. And a couple of comments. First of all, how do you know how loud anything is going to be? You have to model it. You have to use math and equations and your understanding of what are the noise sources, like which chillers are they going to put in and which generators, and then are they in some kind of enclosure, and then what kind of enclosure. All that goes in, and then you can do calculations by hand, but these days they're done by a computer program, which does all the calculations. There are two main computer programs that are used. They're both internationally used, ISO certified, meaning they're about as good as you're going to get. And they use the same one that I use called SoundPlan. And their acoustical engineer met with Zach and me on a Zoom call, and he walked us through his model. Now, I can't speak to whether everything he did was right because I didn't have the actual code, but everything he did was the same thing I would have done, and I think any competent modeler of sound would have done. So what I'm saying is I start from the presumption that he did it right, but the way this worked is there are certain conservative assumptions built in. I'll give you an example. The farther away you are from something, the more the sound attenuates because the distance spreads the sound over a larger surface. So there's a certain drop-off. But you also lose sound by absorption of the ground because at long distances, some of the sound gets soaked up. But they assumed that no sound got soaked up, that it was paved all the way in all directions, like this site was on a parking lot, which is conservative because if then it's quiet enough, it'll be even quieter when there's grass or trees or other things. You see what I mean? So that's what I mean by conservative. Everyone with me? Okay. So there are two noise sources here. Relative to the original design a couple of years ago, where there were those water-cooled chillers, let me just say that those were noisy. They were little waterfalls with fans on top, and they are noisy all the time. And so we had a sound wall to try to block some of that sound from those. Those have been replaced by rooftop chillers, which we've just been hearing about, magnetic bearings, no ball bearings, things are floating magnetically. They're much quieter than the chillers were before. They're on the roof though, which means, that's not so great because they're up in the air instead of down on the ground. And so the sound plan model includes that, and it shows how loud they're going to be. Another comment about those rooftop chillers that was mentioned earlier, I just want to say, is the water-cooled chillers are just as noisy all the time. Whether it's a hot day, a hot humid day, or a cold day, they're just the same. The fans have the same noise, and you get more evaporation, but it doesn't affect the noise. But these air-cooled chillers are noisier when it's hot and humid, and they're working harder. If they're at 100%, they're louder than they would be at 40% or whatever. So what happens is the noise that's coming off the roof is going to be louder in hot, humid days, and in not so humid days, less loud. So again, a conservative assumption is they did some modeling with all the chillers running at 100%, which will probably almost never happen. It's hard to imagine that would be, but if that's the worst case for the chillers. But normally they run at about 70% on average, and that's their estimate, not mine. And so that was modeled. And then, so along the edge of the roof, they put a noise barrier which will block some, not all, but some of the direct sound to the residents of Malvern Hunt. Live along the crossroad. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember Yes, no, not Swedesford. The one Cameron Court. So the east-west road north of Swedesford Road within Malvern Hunt. Okay, so those houses are the ones that are most exposed because they're right on the edge looking down at Swedesford Road, across Swedesford Road into this thing. So I was very interested in how much those noise barriers on the roof will block some of the sound to them. Not all of it, because sound goes over barriers, as you know, from noise on highways like Route 202, which has noise barriers, but you know, they don't stop all the noise, they just reduce it. Okay, so there's noise barriers on the top, and then every single chiller, according to the model and according to my understanding of their work, has its own noise control package. You know, when you buy the chillers, it comes with, let's think of it as a muffler. You know, each chiller has its own muffler on the roof, as well as the noise barrier. And then the generators, which we've already heard are not going to all be running simultaneously unless there's a catastrophic outage. But they even modeled that. They said if they all did run, this would be how loud they are. Each one of those is in its own enclosure too. And there's a noise wall at the end of each building to further shield that. So the upshot of all of this is that they've been able to show me that this facility as designed is as good or better as the previous facility in terms of noise. Okay, now that's an estimate based upon a model. Will it always be exactly true? Is the model perfect 100%? Probably not. I want to mention one other thing and then I'll stop talking, and that is that your noise ordinances involve two things. They involve the background noise level, which is not defined in your ordinances, and also an absolute decibel level, 60 degrees at night, 65 during the day at the property line. This is your ordinance. And so they have shown that they are going to be compliant with these, at least to a first estimate. My noise report, which I guess will eventually see the light of day for these folks, ends with a comment that I personally believe that this facility will not cause enough noise for anyone to be extremely bothered by it. It doesn't mean it will be silent, especially when those rare times in a hot summer day when the humidity is high and all the chillers are going as much as they will be, and people have their windows open, and it happens to be dawn on Sunday morning or something like that, where the background noise from 202 and Swedesford Road is low. You'll hear a sort of a distant hum or a whooshing or something like that. But I don't think it's going to rattle the windows and be, you know, a major problem. That's my professional opinion based upon the data that I've been given. I can take any more questions from you guys. Yep, please.
Yeah, in your letter, the January 12th summary of your findings.
Yes.
On page 2, because this goes back to the generator question I had. And I think it might just be a typo that you had, or I'm hoping. It's a third paragraph down. You were talking about their acoustical model, LSG&A, has included the specification for 288 specified rooftop air-cooled chillers, which may be totally correct, and 272 emergency generators. You're off by 200 according to them.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what the model had, as far as I could tell. Not 72, 272.
Okay, and that's fine, but you were saying that the acoustic model...
There were multiple iterations of the design before we got to the 36 per building. We started with a much higher, and you know, obviously, you know, so the sound study had that higher number in it, and was performed with that higher number. And again, we were not running all the generators simultaneously because we're running the generators we're maintaining, so it shouldn't impact dramatically the outcome of that study. But
so if it were modeled after 272, that it's greatly diminished now with the generators. Okay, so I just want to clarify.
It wasn't a typo. That is my understanding of the model. I saw it with my own eyes. Just one last point. Again, that will only happen if there's a catastrophic failure of those of the Plainsboro station and the other stations that supply it. So unlikely.
And following up on that, is the applicant willing to accept a condition, if the Planning Commission were to recommend it, that in the event that further mitigative measures are necessary post-build-out, as the township would determine, that the applicant would install those mitigative measures at that point in time, further mitigative measures?
Yes, and Carr has also made the suggestion that we actively monitor the noise at the property line, and in these buildings we're actively monitoring via telemetry thousands of things at all times with a 24/7 staffed knock inside the building, we are happy to also include that monitoring as part of our, and that would be in a situation where something broke and caused a rattling of some sort, which got picked up, that caused us to exceed the ordinance.
All right, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. What I'm suggesting is that...
Yes, and also, if the facts, do not line up with the study, and we get to a place where, we're not meeting the ordinance, we are happy to add mitigative measures to remedy that.
That would be necessary in any event because you wouldn't be complying with the ordinance at that point in time.
Sure.
It'd be in violation of the ordinance. My question is, if the residents of Malvern Hunt or the township on its own initiative comes to you post build out and says, we're having complaints, constant complaints, serious sustained complaints regarding the noise, are you willing to work with the township to implement further mitigative measures at that point in time?
And again, we're always happy to work with the township, without knowing what we're agreeing, we certainly want to be good neighbors. I don't, I can't necessarily, we will do it. We will do whatever we can. I just don't know what we can formally commit to without knowing what the remedy would look like.
And again, I think we can perhaps further have that conversation if that's something the Planning Commission wants to recommend to the, if that's something the Planning Commission wants to recommend to the board. And I'm not suggesting that it would be one-off, so one resident is complaining about noise. I'm suggesting that if there's sustained problems with the noise mitigation measures that they're employing, that there would be the opportunity for further mitigation at that point in time. And that's, again, separate from ordinance compliance per se. Ordinance compliance, not complying with the ordinance will always trigger an enforcement action from the township.
Are we, you're good? You're good. All right.
I did want to address one of Bob's earlier questions with respect to the orientation of the admin portion of the building. I think you opened with something like it felt that this change did not favor the people of the county. I can't recall. Yeah.
Sorry, you basically moved it from the front where it really wouldn't bother anybody. Sorry, moved it from the back to the front.
Yeah, the idea there was to get the major, call it noise generating components, which if you recall, the cooling towers in the previous plan were very close to the property line. So by putting that admin block to the north, it pushing the entire larger building block about 100 feet or so planned south, further from the property line to facilitate the noise discussion. We also think that programmatically that portion of the building lends itself to the occupants in it. And so where the parking is situated on the site and that being, call it the admin or facility support administration area, and lends itself to, call it a prettier fenestration, much more glazing. So we wanted that to be front facing. So in case any of it was visible from Sweetsford, which you can kind of see barely is from the line of sight renderings, we wanted that to kind of demonstrate, call it an office style feel to it.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have one last question, and it's pertaining to, is there any type of special liability insurance that's required by data centers to be in proximity to a pipeline per se? Or any,
there's no,
any special
there's
circumstances?
Nothing that you wouldn't have in a normal real estate of any type, commercial real estate, like property insurance, liability, casualty, that could.
Thank you. Go ahead, Zach.
Were you about to open public comment? Okay.
I was?
Okay. All I wanted to maybe just let the public know, we did receive a number of emailed comments prior to the meeting as requested on our township website relative to anybody who may be not attending in person. We received about 40 emails. We've compiled those. We've provided those to our planning commission in advance of this meeting. Can't say that they've reviewed them all, but I thought I might just very high level summarize them. I would not intend to read them all verbatim. Some of them are pretty strongly worded, as I'm sure you can imagine. Some include a bit of profanity, which is fine, I guess. But did just want to just summarize very quickly, if I could. So a number of the comments were in opposition to the plan, stating things like, please vote no, not surprisingly. Some have suggested that it should be a new plan as opposed to an amended, which I can certainly clarify later if that's warranted. Concerns over increased PICO bills, strain on the local grid, concern that data centers would be prioritized over local residents, doubt that the grid that can support a facility like this, which I think has been generally addressed. I'll be more general here. Water use, runoff, and environmental impacts, be it stormwater or use for cooling of the facilities, which I think has also been addressed. Noise impacts from the generators, continuous rooftop generator or chiller noise, concerns over echoes into the surrounding neighborhoods, which I think has been modeled and kind of spoken at a high level here. Air pollution and health risks, generators primarily are cited there. Traffic, which hasn't been talked about in detail, but has been studied and provided impact studies, which are on our website, I believe. Concerns over congestion, especially related to nearby schools. Loss of open space. I should note this is a privately owned property, which I think there may have been some comments that thought that the township owned this property. We do not. We own the property between this property and Sweetsford Road, which they'll be planting trees on and providing a trail through, otherwise, and a driveway. Otherwise, there's no transaction here between the township and the applicant. Concern over property values, that the data center would reduce home values. Concern over the limited number of permanent jobs that would be created. That's generally not something we analyze too much, but I think is outlined in the fiscal study. I think what they would represent is more related to construction jobs. Concerns over the tax benefits, I guess, that are outlined in the fiscal study. Concerns over transparency and process. Lack of community input. Requests for additional environmental and infrastructure impact studies. Calls for more communication, which we can certainly try to improve on as this process may move forward, including some posting of things online. And yeah, I think generally just asking the township to do the right thing and look out for the residents in any decisions there forward. So just wanted to kind of hit those at a high level rather than read them all. As I said, they've been provided to the Planning Commission and the board.
Thank you, Zach. All right, we're going to start public comment, and before we do, I just want to set some rules here. Priority will be given to East Whiteland residents, so we want to hear them speak first. So if you're not a resident, please wait till all of residents have spoken. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and all comments must be courteous and not contain any offensive language or personal attacks, please. Yelling, chanting, personal attacks, and other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Questions must be directed to the board, and no personal attacks will be permitted. Speaker must respectfully address the board. No signs will be permitted in the township building. I don't know, do I need to read all these?
Probably not. I also don't see any signs yet, but We'll see.
Residents speaking must stay on topic. And following a warning, a disruptive person may be asked to leave the building or virtual meeting and have their name and disruption included in the minutes. Chair has the discretion to call for a recess at any point in the public meeting, and Chair has the discretion to waive any of the above requirements. Thank you for your cooperation, and let's start with the questions. And the gentleman that's been holding his hand up the longest gets to go first.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Chris Fontana. I reside in the Wickfield community. I work in software and infrastructure engineering leadership at Zillow. Zillow is the largest real estate marketplace in the world, and I've spent over 15 years working in technology and data centers. I have a degree in information sciences and technology from Penn State. I work directly with AI systems and the infrastructure that powers them. And I've worked inside a major data center for Vanguard Investments in Malvern and Wayne, Pennsylvania. So when I speak tonight, I'm not speculating. This is my professional world that I live day to day in. But tonight, I'm here as a resident of East Whiteland Township, and I'm here as a dad of 3. For most families here, your home is not just where you live. It is your livelihood, your largest financial asset, your net worth, and your future. From my work at Zillow, I know this very clearly. When uncertainty enters a neighborhood, industrial noise, massive infrastructure, constant energy demand, buyers hesitate. And when buyers hesitate, home values are negatively affected, especially for the families who live closest to this proposed data center. Now, I want to talk briefly about jobs and tax revenue. On paper, data centers promise a lot, but in reality, they create very few long-term local jobs. And once construction ends, most of the economic activity ends with it. Any tax benefit does not outweigh the permanent impact on our land, the strain on local utilities infrastructure, and the risk to the value of our homes, the single biggest investment most families here will ever make. I've seen this before. At Vanguard's data center in Wayne, leadership ultimately chose to shut it down because this region was not ideal for long-term data center production. The limitations include power, infrastructure, and expansion, which made it unsustainable over time, and not to mention the Limerick nuclear power plant, which could be a risk. And that matters because AI data centers do not get smaller, they do not get quieter, they grow. They demand more electricity, more cooling, more backup generators. When the grid is stressed during heat waves, storms, and emergencies, they become more active, not less. What concerns me most is this. It feels like this developer is asking this township to approve a project without fully understanding the long-term consequences to the land, the infrastructure, and the families who live here. That is not fair to this community, and frankly is concerning that East Whiteland Township is not a testing ground. Our homes are not collateral damage, and our families should not be asked to absorb risks that benefit a corporate entity that will ultimately rent out their services to the highest bidder. If this project moves forward as proposed, I will seriously reconsider raising my family in this township. This is not something I say lightly, so my ask is simple. Please decline this proposal, and please do not trade short-term promises for long-term risks and consequences we cannot undo. We will live with this forever and will ultimately impact you and your family's future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you very much. I think it's important to let everyone know, if you don't know, the property is zoned. They have the zoning approval. So as far as denying the project, there's nothing we can do about that. We are strictly here for land development. So yeah, maybe we should give a little history here.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Gill. I'm an attorney with the law firm Hamburg Rubin. We are the township solicitors. And my role here tonight is to take notes, to listen, and then ultimately our firm to be able to offer legal advice to the township with regard to this application. As the chairwoman pointed out, the zoning for this use is already in place. So again, without getting too far into the weeds, think about the land use approval process in Pennsylvania as a two-step process. There's zoning, and there's land development. Zoning goes to the issue of what can be done at a given property. Land development gets into the specifics of a particular site design, including landscaping, lighting, stormwater management, in this situation, noise attenuation, sound attenuation. Think of that as the granular details. So the Planning Commission's role here tonight is to consider the merits of this particular land development application, which is, it may be thought of as an amendment of an existing approval, it may be thought of as a new application, really doesn't matter, that's semantics, how we treat that. But what we're looking at here is the details of this application for this property. This property is zoned to allow a data center use, and as the chairwoman pointed out, the zoning hearing board several years ago, if I'm not mistaken, granted certain zoning relief to facilitate that. So from a perspective of sheer outright denial of the use, that is not likely something that the township has the authority to do at this point in time. Nor did the township ever have the opportunity or the legal right to completely say, we do not want data centers at all in East Whiteland Township. Pennsylvania law is clear that a municipality must provide within its jurisdiction for every legitimate land use. So it would have been inappropriate and illegal for East Whiteland Township to say no data centers in this township whatsoever. So now the Planning Commission is tasked with examining the particularities of this application as it applies to the criteria, and applying the criteria in the subdivision and land development ordinance and other applicable township ordinances. That is what this application is about. That's what your Planning Commission is tasked with doing, and what ultimately your Board of Supervisors is going to be tasked with doing. If anybody has any questions about the legal process here, I'll be happy to address those generally. But I just thought it might be helpful for the members of the public to understand the legal framework here.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. That's an excellent segue into my comment, Mr. Gill. Thank you for that. So my name is Ginny Marcel Kerslake. I'm actually a resident of West Whiteland Township, but I travel this trail very much. That's not an accurate depiction of what it's going to be like. But I also sit on my Township Planning Commission. So what I did right away was I went and I looked back into the history of this application. So very quickly on the timeline, playing off what Mr. Gill just said, so back in 2018, this project came before the Zoning Hearing Board. And they were granted special exception by the Zoning Hearing Board and some other variances for a data center of 720,000 square feet on 44 acres. Then 3 years later, in October of 2021, they came back to the Zoning Hearing Board, and then they asked for a special exception again, but this time instead of 44 acres, 70 acres. And it would be 1.86 million square feet of data centers, and then about 36,000 square feet of modular use. Okay, so that was in 2021. And they got, there's a decision that was made on that. And that decision letter is from November of 2021. Then in May of 2024, they came to you with a final land application for a 1.2 million square foot data center, and I think that was the last reiteration that they had of this. Now we have this amended application asking for an increase of 50%. So this project goes back to 2018 when it first went to the Zoning Hearing Board. It went again in 2021. Has it gone to the Zoning Hearing Board since 2021? Can anyone answer that question? I could not find any record of that.
No, you're correct. There was an initial decision, a subsequent decision, the land development was filed, and now they've filed an amended plan. Okay, well, in your zoning ordinance, you have under section 200-115 in the Zoning Hearing Board, you have expiration provisions. And I'm going to read them to you.
Says, unless otherwise specified by the board, a special exception or variance shall expire if the applicant fails to obtain a building permit within 1 year of the date of the granting of the special exception or variance. Okay, so that original one was 2018. They went again in 2021. It's way past 2021, fellas. It seems to me that this project has to go right back to the drawing board, go to the zoning hearing board, ask for a variance. It can't even really go to a special exception because this is not the property for it. It would be the industrial district for special exception. It's not in your list of special exceptions in the institutional district. But they don't have variances. They don't have, the zoning is not permitted for this use on this property. You have that expiration provision built into your zoning ordinance, and I think it was just missed.
Happy to handle it unless you'd like to.
Thank you for your comment.
I believe the code specifies that a subdivision land development application must be filed within 2 years of the date of the decision. Is that your reading of it as well?
It says if there is, okay, so it goes further to say, if the special exception or variance requires a subdivision or land development, the special exception or variance shall expire if the applicant fails to file an application for preliminary subdivision or land development within 2 years of the date of the granting of the special exception or variance.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess my position would be that the applicant did file a land development application, but I'll let the lawyers speak to that if they'd like.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that question, but an application, an initial application for land development approval, as I understand it, was filed within 2 years of the zoning hearing board's decision. Now, there can be a discussion to be had about whether the current amendment is properly, for lack of a better term, piggybacking off of that original land development application. But Jenny,
Okay, I do have the
Jenny,
dates
let
here.
me finish.
I do have the dates.
Jenny, can I just finish?
Okay, yep.
That conversation can be had, but my understanding is that the applicant did submit its initial land development application within 2 years of the granting of the special exception, certainly as extended.
The special exception that was granted for this larger development, that was November 16th, 2021 is the date of the zoning hearing board decision letter. The application was for the final, for the development was May 30th of 2024. That's more than 2 years. It's 2.5 years.
Okay. I understand.
Okay, so
I understand your position. I'm sure the applicant's counsel would have a response to that position. We are not going to turn this into oral argument.
No, I'm just saying, but the planning commission should be, it's my turn to speak, Mr. Gill.
Jenny, I was in the middle of a sentence. We're not going to turn this into an oral argument on a legal issue.
No, I'm not, right, and I am not a lawyer. I'm just putting it to the planning commission that should be considered. And I'm going to let these people speak because they have a lot to say. I paid a visit with Senator Katie Muth a few weeks ago to Data Center Alley. I've seen what this is like and up close, and please listen to them. But the one thing that
hold on 1 minute. Okay?
But the one thing
hold on 1 minute.
Yeah.
I set the rules in the beginning. Okay. We're not going to have them broken.
Yep.
We want East Whiteland Township residents to speak first. However, I do appreciate that information, and we will certainly be asking about it. And I'm sure we're going to get the answer very quickly.
One more thing that they did not mention at all in the stormwater discussion is that, so I'm on the planning commission, there's a new application.
We need to hear from East Whiteland residents first, Mrs. Kurtlick.
Can I take a minute of someone's time?
Hold on.
They've had to submit, because of this expanded size, I think, they've had to submit a new stormwater plan, correct? To West Whiteland Township. And it's enough of a change that we now have to review it. I know this because I'm on the Planning Commission. It's at our next meeting. They were required to submit a new application. I didn't hear anything about that today. I heard that stormwater's all taken care of, but that's still up for approval in West Whiteland. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any East Whiteland Township resident that would like to speak? Ma'am?
Hi, Megan Reese again, 175 Lap Road. Hold on. I might cry, just so you know, it's because it's upsetting. I've lived here for 33 years. And, you know, I didn't see this occurring. So the fact that it's here now, I'm saying something now. So I have questions, but one of the things I wanted to know is, did this go in front of the Environmental Advisory Committee back when it first went through? Because I have it didn't, but from one of the people who were on it, and I was just wondering why.
Sure. So I'd have to look. I don't think we have a requirement for it to do that, and I do not believe that it did, but I would want to verify that, just like I'd want to verify some of the other comments and questions.
Yeah, just because I'm interested in, you know, it's kind of an environmental impact. It has, you know, like that's what the EAC is for, is to advise them. So I'm a little disappointed at that.
I believe the gentleman behind you, the engineer, is going to answer that.
Jack Robinson, resident historian for this site. Actually, yes, when we were going through the Superfund cleanup, extensive meetings, meetings, with the EAC. So once we had the record of decision and it was clean, and it was deemed residential standard, there was no more meetings at that point. But the site was then cleaned up. But it went through extensive meetings for many years.
No, I was on the board during some of that, so I do remember that. But for this to go through as a data center, it wasn't. So that's regardless. So I have questions. Okay, so I have a generator and it tests every week. So you're saying your generators won't test every week? It has to. And I don't know if that's how all generators are, but you did say you were going to stagger them. But do you have a plan for that? And how many times a week are you going to run a certain amount of generators? If you have 72, you're going to stagger that over a month. That sounds like you're going to have a generator running a lot. And they're loud.
So
that's what
Can I
question.
just jump in here again? So the chairwoman directed during the instructions that all comments should be directed to the planning commission.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering why they were looking at me like they weren't allowed to say anything. Okay, lithium batteries. I'm interested if they're using any lithium batteries for storage. And if so, how are they stacking them? Are they stacking them on top of each other? Because there was a Moss Landing fire in California where a stack of them caught on fire, and as you know, this previously was a lithium site that had to be taken forever to clean up. In that situation, what's your plan? Also, what's your disaster plan? What's your catastrophic? Is the fire department prepared for, you know, any kind of meltdown of this? And what are we supposed to do? I didn't even think about the gas pipeline being right there, and you have all this diesel, and then you have a gas pipeline. Like, I really hope you guys have some sort of, you know, plan, and to share that with us as residents.
Okay. Your time is up. However, I at least recall one of your questions being about batteries, and I thought somebody said there are no batteries on the generators. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm looking at you. Okay, good.
No batteries.
All right, thank you.
That's one question.
Okay, I know. Listen, I'm sorry. I've never done this before, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't cry. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Richard Wall. I live at 8 Westgate Circle.
Can you speak into the microphone, sir?
Good evening. My name is Richard Wall. I live at 8 Westgate Circle in Malvern. I moved here in 2018. I'm a proud New Yorker that has transferred here. I went to Villanova University. I graduated from Boston College Law School, notice to council. I'm a professor of engineering and science technology ethics at Penn State Great Valley. I'm also a professor of professional leadership, professor of business law, professor of negligence. I also teach in negotiations. I also teach at Villanova University. I'm a professor of business law and ethical leadership. I am opposed.
Welcome.
Thank you. I thank you for your time. Thank you for the residents for being here. Thank you for council, fellow council. I am opposed to this development. To council, I understand there are statutory provisions in Pennsylvania that require this. Zoning variances, unless I am wrong, are different. I oppose the zoning variances that were made by the zoning board. It was not transparent. It occurred during COVID, and after COVID, it wasn't open. There is information that's not listed on the website. This is not the way a community should be led. I believe that to agree to these gentlemen for making profit on our property, who doesn't even have answers to questions being asked about our property.
Sir,
Again, please direct your comments to the
I
planning commission.
believe that it is not appropriate to approve any request for enlargement. It's abuse of discretion, it's a breach of public trust, it's failure to exercise constitutionally enforceable authority to protect public health, safety, and welfare. It violates the intent of the community input of your 2016 comprehensive plan. It's a failure to preserve open space where you can, despite the fact that it's privately owned property. You have to take in consideration the zoning and the planning approval to be consistent with the philosophy of protecting open space, and those things that our residents said in 2016 are important to them. And considering the health, cost, and environmental impact studies that should have been done, the zoning variances should not have been approved, and this should be denied. The U.S. Supreme Court in 1926 said the townships are authorized to use the police powers vested in public office to protect public health, safety, and general welfare. And with all due respect to the questions that were not answered, they need to be answered, and these questions have to be answered before you can go even further. You owe that to yourselves, and you owe that to this community. Ironically, and it cannot be lost, that this untested, unvetted data centers that are causing problems throughout the country that have been mentioned in yesterday's New York Times magazine, or New York Times newspaper, caused significant impact to the quality of life. Has a real estate appraisal been done for the people that live in Malvern Hunt? I want to know what the value will be. I live on near Arcadia Markley. I want to know how my property is going to be impacted by this. Has that been done? Do we know how much my costs and our costs are going to go up to pay for our electric? Do we know who paid for the new transmission line? Was that this company, or are we going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for the necessary water? The New York Times, despite what they said, in the United States, which accounts for more than half of the global data center capacity, the AI boom has led researchers to estimate that water needs will grow to 150 billion to 275 billion liters by 2028. Has this been evaluated? Has the answers they provided you been tested? In the 2016 comprehensive plan update, this township said we want to protect and expand open space. I know that it's a private property, council. I get it. I'm with you on that. But you can, as a planning board, have the authority under the United States Constitution to take the value and the input from the community and have that be implicated into the development. This is too large a development. It is not attractive. And all the things they're saying are bells and whistles. They don't have the answers to the questions that need to be asked. I respect the questions that you've asked, particularly all of you. The focus you have on it is not appropriate. They are pushing this through. It should not be done, with all due respect to the statutory requirement. So in conclusion, if in fact any element of this plan is not statutorily provided and required by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have to address the zoning issue that may be back to square one, which I hope it is, as a homeowner and a father of two kids. But whatever is not statutorily required, I ask you and implore you as fellow human beings to ask the necessary questions and shelve this until these individuals behind us can answer the questions that affect our children, our public welfare, our health, and our safety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Should we be reviewing the answers? Some of the answers were given to some of his questions. I don't know.
Well, I think it's.
Or should we?
It's incumbent on the applicant, if the applicant wants to address the community members'
Okay.
comments, for the applicant to address those.
Okay.
After we're done with public comment.
Sir?
My name's Troy Baker. I'm the head of school for Church Farm School. I reside on our campus, on the campus of Church Farm School. I think we've got a pretty special relationship to this land, considering pretty much every office park in the area we owned, right? We owned all of that. And we're pretty good stewards and pretty good neighbors for the better part of 100 years. I think we've worked really hard to be good neighbors and really hard to be good stewards of the land that we're fortunate to own. We're on about 150 acres just west and south of the proposed facility. I've got to say I'm a little disappointed that I haven't heard any mention of the west or the south. In considering the experience of our students and hearing things about where people live, I also care a lot about Malvern Hunt. We own 11 homes in Malvern Hunt as a school, and our faculty and their children live there. We have a lot of lives and a lot of families wrapped up in Malvern Hunt. We also are a place where we're charged with taking care of other people's children. So we have about 150 boys that live on that campus and about 25 residential faculty. I live on that campus, and I would just ask, in that spirit of being good neighbors and consideration, to just consider the students that live and learn to the west of this facility. I've heard about a lot of things that are going to happen on the north. I can't remember what you called it, maybe view line. What did you call that? View shed? Something along those lines. So we just want some information on what things look like for us, what things are going to look like for our students and faculty, impacts on our ability to fit to fulfill our mission, impacts on cost. I'm worried about cost. We own 11 homes in Malvern Hunt. I'm worried about costs on our physical plan of our campus, and would just like to know when I could possibly get a little bit more information on how this directly impacts Church Farm School, our students, faculty, and ability to meet our mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
My name's Tracy DeShane. I'm an East Whiteland resident.
Hello.
I have a question. Does the township have a data center specific noise ordinance? Because my understanding is that the noise generated by data centers is a lower decibel. You're the sound engineer. The C decibels, the hum that becomes unbearable, that's not caught by your normal sound ordinance. So you're getting a data center, but you don't have a data center specific noise ordinance.
So we do not know, but we have asked for this information from the applicant. What is the frequency content of the roof-mounted chillers? We know from the data sheets how much noise they make, but not what is the quality. In other words,
I can show you where to get that information.
well, you don't know the particular kind that they are specifying, I don't think, because it's not available. I've done my best to find it. So we are in process to determine that. Let me also say that there is nothing in your noise ordinances that references data centers or even what the spectrum of the noise is, whether it's high, low, middle, just its decibel level, which is its loudness,
Well,
not anything else. That's just the way the ordinances are written now. They could be amended, but not after the fact.
I have a website that will give you a very effective data center specific noise ordinance. If anybody would be interested in learning about that. I pulled it up just within the last couple days, so.
So if you'd like to
Yeah.
provide that to the township staff, we would certainly like that.
Would have preferred that your work had been done prior to this evening, but if it hasn't been done, then I don't know how you can approve a data center at all if you don't have a data center specific noise ordinance.
Thank you. As I pointed out earlier, the Planning Commission's role here is to review the application in accordance with the existing ordinances, which, as you just heard, do not have use-specific, I don't believe, have use-specific noise criteria, but rather have decibel-based noise or sound criteria. So, again, if you have additional information that you'd like the township to consider within the bounds of what's permitted by law, please submit that.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi there, I'm Larry Levin. I live on Union Hill Road in Malvern. And I've heard some talk about the how the applicant does not anticipate certain disastrous conditions to manifest themselves, such as power outages or freezing, if I understand it right, of the circulation coils. But I'm wondering what the impact on the community would be if one of those disastrous conditions does in fact happen, because as we all know, disasters do occur. And I think that they have to be taken into account. Another concern that I have is my property uses well water, and I don't know what the effect of the water usage here is going to be on the groundwater, and I haven't heard any discussion of that. You know, what the source of the water is, and in terms of replenishment, but, you know, from what I hear, you know, I think anybody in this room who uses well water, it sounds to me like the value of our properties have just gone down. And last but not least is, and to a certain extent, well, in the news today, there was, I think it was, well, one of the big package deliveries companies is laying off 16,000 jobs because they're dropping Amazon as a customer because there's not enough profit in making deliveries for Amazon. That's 16,000 jobs. And then a little further down on the news page that I was reading, Amazon is cutting 14,000 jobs because of AI. They don't need those jobs anymore. And so my question is, of what benefit to this community is this project? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Sir.
I'll be quick. My name is Brian Lorden. I live on 2 Brett Lane here in East Whiteland. Chemical engineer by trade. I talk in numbers, so apologize for that in advance to everybody. The application to PICO I saw, I believe, asked for 150 megawatts of power. And a quick kind of cursory search for the amount of power draw for Chester County, the entire county as a whole. Last year, I believe, was 6.1 million megawatt hours, so average consumption of around 690 megawatts. So comparing those numbers, 150 megawatts over 690, that's about a 20 to 25% increase in the total power consumption, just to kind of put everything in perspective for the entire county, just from this site. So the amount in, you know, East Whiteland, it'll be astronomical. I share the concerns that were brought up by the board. I appreciate the questions that came up about the potential implications of the cost of electricity. I think they could be anywhere from very significant to catastrophic based on that again, very cursory calculation. So I'm opposed to anything that would increase the size of this, that would increase the amount of data centers, the amount of potential electricity draw. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. This is my first time attending any one of these. My name is Tony Giannino. I live in the aforementioned Malvern Hunt, so thanks for recognizing where I live. One of the questions I had was along the road there on Sweetsford, not as important as any of the other questions that have been asked. I'm opposed to this. These monstrous buildings look hideous. But my concern just right off the bat was there was going to be like the forestation put in on that sewage area. Is that going to be just like these little sapling trees? So for the next 10, 15 years, we're going to see this junky building that's been put into where our green space was, and all through the construction, is that going to be barricaded in, or is it going to be mature growth, which is more resemblance of the neighborhood? That was a big concern just driving in that area. It's become my home over the last several years, and I really just want to protect that for the residents. Additionally, too, I know on the top of the buildings we're going to be added the chillers, and they were going to be the magnetic, kind of chilling system rather than the water. My daughter and son live on the second floor of our home, and I don't live on the back of that Sweetsford Road, so I don't directly get impacted by any of the noise. But how far out does that kind of spread out? I know that you did a lot of the work, the legwork for us, so I appreciate that. But I'm just worried about is there something long lasting to their health that I have to be concerned about? So that's really all I have. I appreciate everyone tonight.
So the one question I can answer for you is the caliber of the trees, and what is required is all existing tree masses, tree lines, and hedgerows, trees over 12 inches in caliber as measured, 36 inches from the ground level, which are not part of the tree mass, denoted as to type and size, and individual trees over 12 inches in caliber measured at said height.
So there would just be a bunch of foot-tall trees?
So, but just to clarify briefly, what Deb is mentioning is our requirements for inventorying existing trees. There's different sections of our code that require different types of vegetation. There's some in our stormwater ordinance, there's some in our zoning ordinance, there's some in our subdivision and land development ordinance. What they've proposed is sort of in addition to that. Generally, the species for like replacement trees that are planted, per these landscaping requirements are in that 2.5 to 3 inch caliper trees. I wouldn't speak to what the applicant is proposing. It may be larger than that even. There's always adjustment periods for them to take root and to adjust to their new home, but I'd let the applicant speak to that if they'd like to, but I just wanted to clarify.
I'll just address that because that's been a really important part of this. And I will say that I talked to the tree supplier today, and he said that they didn't have anything less than a 3-inch tree that's coming out there. But some of these are bushes. The trees are coming out there, and the trees are going to be fairly large. The farm that we're using is up near Bethlehem, and they'll bring all the trees down here. We're going to do it right away. We're going to do it in March, get the trees growing. We're going to water them. We'll take good care of them. We're spending a lot of money on this. It's a very special thing to me. I made a promise to one of the supervisors that was here at first to replace the trees that had been there before Cutler came in and cut the place down and dug it up. We filled it back very carefully. We amended the soil. We put topsoil in there with the idea that we were going to plant these trees. So, yeah.
Can we have quiet in the room, please? We will, as the chairwoman said, we will. But when some, excuse me, may I finish my comment, please? When somebody is talking, we have a court reporter here who is trying to transcribe every word that's being said. That job is infinitely more difficult if there is a lot of background noise. I don't know if you can hear or not hear, but jumping in here to say, please, let's have some quiet in the
And just a quick note, the dimensions I read on the trees, it was the code and not necessarily, that's the minimum requirement, not necessarily what the applicant is proposing.
Good evening, I'm State Senator Katie Muth. I represent Senate District 44, which includes East Whiteland Township. Thank you all for having me. I'm starting my own time clock here. The first thing I just wanted to ask, and a previous commenter brought this up, and you can get back to me, but in terms of your saldo requirements and agreements, and I'm living in a neighborhood in a different township that's battling this, so I'm very familiar. Once there is an approved plan, there is supposed to be the financial security is supposed to be posted for the completion of the required improvements. So there should be a 10% annual add-in to what is already in the kitty, so to speak, for this development since it was approved. So will those records be available to the public in terms of those, since 2024, I believe, was the plan approval?
Yeah, so the plan, they have not posted financial security for the plan yet, the previous plan, if that's what you're referring to.
That is what I'm referring to.
Okay, yeah, so that has not been posted yet. There hasn't been financial security posted for the current plan. So generally those things, just to clarify a little bit maybe for the audience more so, because it sounds like you're well versed, the plan is generally, the security is generally posted prior to the plan recording, which is prior to commencement of construction. So just to maybe clarify when that normally comes into play.
Yeah, it does say in your saldo, though, that if the plan is not being constructed and it's delayed, and these improvements that were approved in the plan, there should be a 10% increase annually.
I'm with you now. So that like an escalator, so
yes,
to speak?
yeah.
So the cost of construction that they'll prepare and we'll review will be reviewed prior to recording the plan. So they've prepared an estimate based on recent construction costs in order to potentially record the previously approved plan. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I read your ordinance otherwise, but that's okay. We can.
If it drags out longer, we would escalate it long term.
Sure. Again, those don't have an escalator after your neighborhood in a residential example. They're not adjusted for inflation either. So you are left, if your developer doesn't actually build your neighborhood correctly, you're very much SOL, so to speak, to mind your rules. So I'll go restart my clock, sorry. The other things I just wanted to bring up quickly is there's talks about cost. When you all get home, please Google, or tomorrow, PJM. We are one of 11 states in the PJM grid. Every single dollar of your electric bill annually has been a cost, a portion of that cost. We all pay our electric bill every month to subsidize the transmission build out for data centers in the 11 state PJM grid. In 2024, Pennsylvanians paid $492 million in their annual or their monthly electric bills for this transmission infrastructure for data center build out. So I want you to know that that's not something locally that you're able to regulate. That's at the PUC level, and happy to talk more about that later. But what you can regulate at the local level is stranded assets, and I highly recommend that you update some of your ordinance language to include, or as a condition of approval, is that there aren't stranded assets left behind, meaning Pennsylvania has over 300,000-ish abandoned wells that corporations left behind, and we, the taxpayer, are forced to clean up the bill for. And right now, there's nothing in Pennsylvania law that requires any one of these data centers to clean up their mess and not just abandon ship and leave us with a giant hazardous waste site. So just wanted to plug that. The other thing, the gentleman who spoke about the school nearby, I do want to point to the sound ordinance. I legally believe that you are required and should change the conditions. I know you can't update an ordinance mid-application, but you can change some approval things, and that the sound ordinance should actually be based on the World Health Organization, which is legally defensible in court. And those provisions, I think all people, all humans, whether it's 1 or 500,000 or however many, are sensitive receptors, and each one of us are prone to harm from noise pollution. And little learners, young brains, above 35 decibels, they can't effectively learn. So there are things that need to take place for anything, not just this proposal. It's nothing personal to the data center, but there should be provisions for all ages of life to have sound protection because it also leads to hearing loss, which leads to dementia and Alzheimer's, sleep loss, neurodisruption, cardiovascular issues, et cetera. And you can slow me down if I'm going too fast. I'm already over my time. I'm just waiting for her to cut me off. And the other thing I just want to talk about is, lastly, is the hazardous mention of evacuation and disasters and all these things. And I do want to point out Hurricane Ida wasn't that long ago. And so I'm not sure if they're able to disclose their power purchase agreement with PECO, which I assume they have. Most data centers do. I assume this is some sort of AI hyperscale data center based on the megawatts. Smaller, I'm going to call them regular data centers that are cloud storage or medical records, 911. In Collegeville by GSK, there's a data center right there in Senate District 44. Their power purchase agreement with PECO, actually, they give power back to the grid when there's a disaster. So just want to mention that as something that should be, I don't think you should approve this at all, but you should consider that in terms of requiring that. And I am saying I don't approve it at all because of this hazard, evacuation, all the emergency response. I don't see anything in any of the documents uploaded online. They may exist that are about how these emergencies are going to be handled. And there's a lot of diesel fuel on site. There are neighboring infrastructure of oil and gas. We have traffic. We have 4,000 different things that could be modeled in a hazardous modeling study to show how you need to protect residents, and that's also making sure your first responders are equipped with the equipment and training and staffing that they need to actually respond to this. And most of these sites are secure, as they mentioned. Our first responders won't have access, so there's a delay in response time. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of fire hydrants, as this infrastructure is a very difficult fire to put out, so you want to make sure you have adequate water. God forbid it go up in a blaze. But those are things that seem to be always an afterthought, and I see that Mr. Gill's rolling his eyes at me, so it is an afterthought. It's okay, it's all right, it's late. It's okay, it's late. But those are things that I think about and that you should, as your obligation legally, to protect your community. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Sir?
My name's Dean Prescott. I've lived in the township for 42 years. I'm a local businessman. My head's spinning with what's going on here. I think you guys are way out over your skis here with what you should be asking, and there's a lot that appears to me that you don't even know you should be asking. I feel like these guys here tried to steamroll the meeting and just make everything hunky-dory. I don't understand how you can go from a 1 million square foot building to a 1.6 million square foot building and call it a modification. It's not like putting a screen porch on your house. This is a total different plan. So I would hope that you would look at it as a total different plan and not a modification of the previous plan. I don't know who makes that decision. Is that a decision you would make, or? It's not a decision that we would make. Okay.
We understand the township understands the position that this may be treated as an amendment to the existing approved plan, or it may be treated as something different from that. It may be treated as a totally new plan. Mm-hmm. The applicant is going through the review process. That's what this is all about here tonight. So we certainly understand your comment. I'm not going to issue a legal conclusion on that right here, but I'm certainly going to discuss it.
I have my answer. I'd like to second what the senator said as far as a noise ordinance. I understand you can't do it midway, but you can certainly do something about having it adhere to something else that would be better. One of the board members talked about trust these guys with their stuff. I didn't hear anything from them when you asked the question. It was all a dance. I didn't hear any specifics. When I heard specifics, I think I heard 70 generators, 270 generators, 35 generators. I don't know where we are with this stuff. So to me, it just seems like it's not being attended well, and it's not being addressed well. And I would ask people to do a better job at addressing the data center. I personally am not in favor of data centers, but they're here, and we're not going to stop them. But let's at least put some controls on them. Let's not trust them to reduce the sound or the environmental impact. Let's have it built into the approval that it's going to conform to this, and if it doesn't, we have the ability to make the change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No Steeler fans allowed.
Yeah, well, not an Eagles fan. I grew up in Pittsburgh. My name's Denny Sward, and I live in Malvern Hunt. I've lived in East Whiteland for 45 years. I am very disappointed with this. I just feel like I came to this meeting tonight and second what the gentleman just said. We didn't get any answers to any questions. I remember when Williams upgraded their system, the noise level. We, in Malvern Hunt, the president had to put a monitor over to check the decimals. Now, we're going to believe this individual on statistics. That's bullcrap. It really is. I guarantee you those decimal levels are going to be high. What kind of guarantee? They didn't even guarantee us that they would address it. We come in here today, the whole model's changed. That's ridiculous. Why would we even consider approving that? It's like bait and switch. That's what it is. You can't tell me any different. I work for a computer company. We run an AI data center. This is ridiculous what they want to put over here. I don't think anybody put any thought into this. And the lady that came up with all the different rules and regulations of our township, we need you to get on board and understand what the hell's going on. This was a ridiculous meeting, period. We got no answers to any of our questions, none. The electricity in my house will go up in Malvern Hunt, from what I've read. Because if they can't supply the grid Pico, they're going to buy it from somebody else. Who pays for that? We do. So all I'm saying is we got to really think this thing out. We got a beautiful township, and we're going to make it look like hell by putting these data center in it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I know it's getting late and I wasn't going to talk, but I'm pretty ticked off right now. So I'm going to give it a go. The first thing I do want to open up is just a reminder why there is a ton of statutes. Oh, sorry, Julie Ferris, Charlestown Township, 28 Mountain Laurel Lane. Technically it's Malvern, but the jurisdictions around here is all weird. I just want to open this up and just remind everyone, yes, you do have local statutes and things that need to go ahead and have. Pennsylvania is one of the few states in the United States that gives Pennsylvanians the constitutional right under Article 1, Section 27 to environmental rights, and it grants us clean air, pure water, and the preservation of natural, scenic, and historic aesthetic values. And I'm sitting here wondering, as we have so many omissions and lack of data points, how you can guarantee any of that. Okay, I'm blown away. I'm looking here, and one of the first things is this is being built on top of the Foot Mineral Mine Superfund property. Can anyone point to any report, any analysis that was done about legacy contaminants, soil disturbance impact, or how excavation can mobilize buried toxins? And what that can do to the surrounding community? That seems like a pretty big omission. 50 plus years of lithium processing, and the golden rule of the Superfund site has been, don't touch it, never dig. How much earth, how much soil are we moving on this project? How deep are we digging? And what is the health impact? No answers. I noted that in the study there was no hydrogeologic study performed. We're all sitting here looking at Route 29 right now with massive construction on it in front of the wall. Well, why? I'm not a geologist, but I looked it up, so forgive me if I say things wrong. But it's because of something called karst geology, which the report does acknowledge. It means we have fractured limestone and that we're prone to sinkholes. It also means that we're highly vulnerable to rapid groundwater contamination when something does go awry. And most of us have well water around here. Where is the health impact assessment? Where is the risk study? Where are these things covered in any of your evaluations that made the decision for approval of this and expansion of it? They're just completely absent. I noticed again, for the thermal analysis on the pollution risk to Valley Creek, there's completely optimistic assumptions that don't hold under real conditions. You know, the thermal analysis assumes the wet pond is going to remain permanently stratified and reliably release cold water at the bottom, but it doesn't evaluate the impact in heat waves, sediment buildup, or system degradation that can compromise performance, which would directly leak into Valley Creek, up the temperature levels, and compromise all the cold fish that exist in that stream that we've worked so hard to preserve and protect. I am wondering what the heck happened here. And I am very unhappy to go ahead and see that, like others have pointed out, we don't seem to have answers to key questions. And considering I work in healthcare data analytics, I definitely have an appreciation for data and AI centers. But I also have an appreciation for the clinical impact studies. And there is just tons of emerging evidence about the adverse impact. The estimate was, according to the Harvard Business Review, data center pollution is going to increase public health burden by $20 billion by 2028 because of respiratory, COPD, and asthma implications. These are serious consequences that haven't been evaluated, and I'm really asking everyone to do their job much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gina DeMarco. I don't live in this township. We lived in East Brandywine, but what brought us here is our electric bill. So this is kind of like we dug down a rabbit hole. I didn't realize we were going to find this. But in December, we have $2,300 worth of electric bills. So no matter how many times, we live in a 1,400 square foot home. So no matter how many times we call PECO, there's just, I don't know. They're just running us in circles. I called the state representative, and this is what led us to the data centers. So there's an added distribution fee now of $360 a month. This is more than our mortgage. Like they said, there's nothing they can do about it, but this is what we have to fight against. And my question is, I kept hearing him say this is very important to us, meaning them. How is it important to us? How is it important to our environment? And you're giving those little baby trees a big job to do. Like they're not preventing the environment from being destroyed. They're just disguising the mass destruction. Like I don't. It's fucked up. Like I'm sorry, excuse my language, but this is Earth. Like what are we doing? Thank you. I mean, like.
Hi, my name is Courtney DeWeese, and I'm an East Whiteland Township resident living in Malvern Hunt. And I completely echo the comments that have been made by, the important observations that have been made by those who spoke. So I won't sort of revisit those topics. But with respect to the sound, right? So in Malvern Hunt, we have the Williams Pipeline station adjacent to us, and now we're going to have a data center across from us potentially. And so I would like to understand better how these sound studies, and I can appreciate that you reviewed the methodology, right? But with respect to the sound studies, was the Williams station sound at its capacity, sort of coupled with the projections from the data center, right? Like, so we're kind of getting it from both sides, and it's unclear to me, based on what's been described tonight, how those two elements come together to potentially, you know, be beyond what the decibel requirements are. So I'm, you know, very concerned about that. Secondly, we've talked, I heard it mentioned that, you know, reserving the right to come back and put other mitigation measures in place. And I would say it's incumbent for the commission to understand what those might be and ask for those up front, because it's much harder, I think, to get a company, a corporation, to sort of do things on the back end. So if there's other things that can be put in place right out of the gate, I think it's incumbent to evaluate those and require the company to, you know, consider those. The other thing I'll mention is the pipeline risk, right? We've heard a lot of, you know, comments about safety, and there's a massive community, you know, going up on the other side of Malvern Hunt. And it is not clear to me, again, in the spirit of not having a lot of clarity on the answers, what is in place to protect our communities. If there's a pipeline issue, if there's a data center issue, all of these things are just too close for comfort for me. And, you know, I just really worry about the potential ramifications of a disastrous event from that perspective. And lastly, I'll comment on the energy costs, right? So I think it's all pretty clear. We got some pretty soft answers on that. And I think it's incumbent on the commission to seek out if there are other, whether it's in Northern Virginia, et cetera, like if there are other communities that have experienced this, I think it's incumbent upon all of you to do that investigative due diligence work to understand what the energy cost impact is to these communities so that you can make a fully informed decision. Because again, we're not getting clarity on what those answers are. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Steve Lawrence. I live on Church Road up by Route 30. I was watching on my phone earlier, and pardon me, I was in the shower 10 minutes ago, so I had to come here because of the stuff I was hearing. Bravo to the first gentleman that spoke, and the young lady from West Whiteland. That was good. My concern is, piggybacking off the last speaker, is the sound. We got models, you know, nobody's going to know what's going to go. I live at Route 30, the sound barriers for 202. I can tell you what gear the truck's in coming down from Westchester, going around the bend. It's horrific. I mean, you know, so I'm sure there were studies on that. My main topic, though, is there a mechanism that can be put in place for the people that live in Malvern Hunt, the people, I don't know what the name of the road is, the townhouses, the new ones along there. Is there a mechanism that can be put in place 3 years, 4 years down the road, average property values? Are there studies that say they're lower because of this place? Because it sounds to me like this thing's getting built. I hope I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like it's getting built. Once it's built, what's their recourse if the sound is just unbearable? Not that it will be, but it might be. Nobody knows for sure. Is there a way they can be held liable for, if I have to sell if somebody has to sell their house there in 2 years, 3 years down the road, and they can't get what they should have gotten because there's a sound issue? And he even said, studies, I don't know if he referenced studies, but that's got to be an issue. And people, you know, it's their number one thing in their life that they put money into. How can we not have something in place to make those people whole if they need to be? That's my only concern about it, because it sounds like this is going to get done, and I hope it doesn't, but I don't know. Something maybe you can think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Ken Razor. We've lived here since, 2007, my wife and I. So I just have a couple questions. So the initial proposal for this thing was for a smaller building with 270 generators, was that correct? Was a smaller building with 270? I'm not supposed to address them, I'm supposed to address you guys. I'm asking.
Thank you.
With a smaller building.
Study was done on that, but they never
So now
They,
we have
they
a-
never wanted 270. That was spoken about, that was clarified.
Because
by-
I was like, now we have a bigger building with less? That math didn't math. So, all right, so then the follow-up. Has anybody talked about the toxins or the e-toxins that are gonna transpire from any of this? Has anybody said anything about any of that? Anyone? What do you mean, what e-toxins? What are you talking about? The stuff that they have to replace in 3 to 5 years? Where's that going? What's gonna happen with that?
We did discuss that early on in the meeting, and I was happy with the answer, which is that they're not adding any biocides or ethylene glycol. It's not quite like our car radiators, right? It's mostly just deionized water. And if that's the case, they're going to replace it periodically to keep it clean, but I heard that they have no toxic liquid to dispose of.
Can I
Now,
ask a
I'll stand
clarifying
corrected,
question?
but that's what I heard.
Yeah, maybe, can I just ask a clarifying question? Your question is about equipment, once it's
yes.
no longer functional, it's obsolete or otherwise,
Mhm.
what happens to the equipment once they get rid of it from their
Yep,
facility?
yep.
Okay. That would be a question for the applicant, of course, but I just wanted to clarify relative to what I think you were responding to.
I mean, I didn't hear that at all from this, so.
Sorry. Anyone else have a comment or a question?
Okay, I just wanted to add another procedural comment because there was an awful lot of comment made by some people in the room about this is a done deal or not enough answers were provided. This meeting is part of the normal process for the review of a land development application. So when an applicant for land development approval submits their application, that application, along with all of the applicant's materials, goes out to the township's consultants, one of whom is sitting here next to me, and those consultants conduct a review. Those consultants deliver their reviews to the township, the planning commission, and then in almost every situation, the planning commission holds a meeting, just like the one that we're in right now, where members of the public have the opportunity to hear the applicant's presentation, to make comments, which obviously many of you have, and then it's incumbent upon the applicant to take the information that the applicant has received from the township's professional consultants, from the members of the planning commission, from members of the public, and it's up to the applicant then to determine how and whether it will respond to those comments. It's important to remember that the township is bound by state law, and the township is bound by its own ordinances as they were in effect at the time that the application was submitted. So a lot of the comments that we've heard today, the township should and will take into account as the Planning Commission decides what recommendation it will make to the Board of Supervisors. Some of the comments that we heard today are with regard to issues that are outside of the township's jurisdiction. They're within the jurisdiction of other regulatory bodies, such as DEP, or the Chester County Conservation District, or in another land development application, it might include PennDOT. But here, the township, this is all part of the process. So I heard a lot of comments about how we didn't have answers, there's not enough information, but this meeting where you all raise these questions and these comments is an integral part of the land development review process. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that the township can, should, and will take into account your comments within the constraints of the law. Again, there are things that are within the township's jurisdiction, and there are things that have been raised here that are outside of the township's jurisdiction. The commission.
Thank you, Michael. I also would like to remind the residents that we are all residents of East Whiteland Township here. We have been reviewing this since 2018. We've been having discussions on the data center. I recall, I believe the second application, there might have been 3 residents from Malvern Hunt that showed up to discuss this. And now, I just want to be clear, there is zoning in place for the data center. We are here to have the best land development plan we can. As residents of East Whiteland, we're responsible to you and ourselves. We all have the same goal, and we all care about the same things. Thank you.
At this point, it's appropriate to ask if the applicant has any additional comments that they'd like to make in this meeting this evening. Will the applicant make a resubmission to the township so that further discussion and consideration can be had? Lou, what's your pleasure here?
Can we take like a 1 minute break so I can talk to the client?
Sure.
Won't be longer than that.
Zach, do we want to take a breather here anyway? Let people use the restroom if necessary?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break. I believe the applicant is going to make some comments.
Yeah, but very briefly, we heard the comments, obviously, of yourselves and the residents, and we'll be addressing them over the next. In fact, we're going to. I just checked another plan set addressing the review comments will be delivered tomorrow to the township. So we'll be back in February to obtain a recommendation one way or the other. I did want to reiterate just one point, that there are certain things, and it's not that we're avoiding not answering them. There are certain things that are just beyond our control, and we ourselves can't get answers. So we will answer what we can. Other things are in the hands of other regulatory agencies, such as emissions controls, in the hands of DEP and EPA, stormwater management in the hands of the township as well as DEP. So we will answer what we can. We will answer what is in the jurisdiction of the township to review. That's how we do every plan. So if we don't have answers to everything, trust me, it's not because we're skirting it or avoiding it. It's because we honestly wouldn't know. I don't know. We don't know how PICO adjusts its rate schedule. We don't know that. That's between them and the PUC. There are all kinds of factors in that. And this township, as you know, can't base its decision on PICO's rate structure anyway. There are certain issues that I think unfairly we're expected to know and you're expected to regulate, but we will come in and we will bring ourselves within the confines of the subdivision land development and zoning ordinance. And to answer the one question that the woman from West Whiteland raised regarding the application, it was filed within the requisite 2-year time period following the zoning board's decision of 2021. So that issue about starting all over again, the data is in the township's files. I know you didn't have the dates. I had to look them up myself here as that. I just wanted to put everybody's mind to rest that procedural issue has been covered. So thank you very much for your comments. I do appreciate the respect we were given. I tried to be respectful back, and we will continue that dialogue and that relationship. If there is specific information that you need and that we filed and somehow hasn't found its way online, let me know or let Zach know or let somebody know, because they are public records. And it's much better that if you have a chance to review them before you come to the meetings than not having the benefit of what we've submitted. So,
Lou, I think it also may be helpful if in your responses, we'll have the transcript.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously know what the concerns from the residents are and from the Planning Commission. If there are issues that you believe are outside of the township's jurisdiction, if you can identify those and tell the township, and by virtue of that, the residents, which agencies you think have jurisdiction over those specific issues.
We will.
So, for instance, as you
definitely
said,
do that.
electricity rates, if you want to identify the PUC, that would be a good example.
No, definitely we'll do that. And as I heard these comments tonight, I sort of wish myself that we had done that prior to this meeting. Maybe we could have eliminated some of these questions, which We won't have answers in February either, I can tell you that right now, on some of those issues, because they're being regulated by standards that this township doesn't even have in any of its ordinance books or rule books or anywhere else. So we will do what we can do. And if you have questions you want to direct us individually, we will give you a card, business card, and you can call, and you don't have to wait till the public meeting for us to respond to it. We'll share with you what you have. It's a public process. We're in it. As Mr. Gill stated, this is part of the process, and we'll do what we can do to help move it along, one way or the other. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Deb, could I just add one thing? Sorry to belabor this.
Zach.
I know everyone probably wants to go home. I apologize. I think there was a couple things referenced here this evening, some of the comments made by the Planning Commission and members of the public on additional information requested to be supplied. We understand, to your point, not everything are things that you have answers readily available for. If you could, upon resubmission, identify some of those aspects, when you might have them, whether you might have them, I think it would help us kind of keep track of some of the things that have been raised and some additional information that we might want to review.
Well, I know Dr. Everbach has asked for additional information, which we're in the process of assembling, and I know that'll be the information that's forthcoming. I heard reference tonight about a plume study. Whatever that is, I don't pretend to know what it is, but these folks know what it is. So that information will be included. That'll be updated. And I'll have to go back and read the notes of testimony to see what else was requested and what we can provide. But by the way, can we have an expedited copy of the transcript? No, we can't have an expedited, okay. Well, as soon as I get that transcript, we'll supplement our filing with anything that we might have missed, but we took pretty good notes. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Any other business? Okay. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for being respectful, minus the one gentleman.
Deborah, we're not going to be voting
that.
on anything tonight, are we? No, there's no more voting? None.
No. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.